Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal. See playlist for other chapters and novels. Join now our Telegram channel now and enjoy exclusive early access. t.me/blood_immortal_official. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 1041. You'd really dare to kill me? Lin Haoming and the others placed down the chopsticks in their hands. The 7 family heads understood in their minds that it was probably time to settle the scores now. At this moment, Ning Tikan and the other 2 were extremely horrified as their hearts pounded furiously. Senior brother Lin stood in front of them without saying a single word. However, the invisible pressure that he brought forth was just like a gigantic mountain that crushed down onto their hearts, causing them to shiver in fear from within. Senior brother, Zhou Jun and Wang Yun gulped their saliva, looking exceptionally frantic at this moment. What do you guys propose that I should do? Lin Fan spoke up as he lowered his head to look at these 3 people. His heart was blazing with a slow burn right now. Bold, really bold, to think that they would dare to come and show off in front of his family. Senior brother, we truly did not know. This Ning Tikan was the one who had dragged us over. Even if you gave us 10 guts, we would not have dared to act audaciously in front of your family and close ones, Senior brother Lin. Zhou Yun and Wang Jun cried out. Senior brother Lin was one of the Grandmaster candidates. Even if he killed them, the sect would not make any noise about it. At the most, they'd give him a slight reminder. But, the worst thing was that they were the ones at fault right now. Even if senior brother Lin wanted to kill them, the sect would absolutely do nothing about it. Lin Haoming stood there, feeling extremely gleeful. This was his son, he was feeling way too proud right now. Even though he had been messed around mercilessly by the other party earlier on, now that his own son was back, what could all the pains he had suffered earlier on amount to? The other 7 family heads had the same thoughts as Lin Haoming. Even though young Master Lin did not have that much of a relationship with them, the 7 great families were all watched over by him still. What could all these disciples who acted all high and mighty because they were in some sects amount to? Now that young Master Lin was back, didn't they have to kneel down onto the ground obediently one by one still? Usually, when they were having their meals, they would look for performers to play some music to add to the mood of the meal. But today, while everything was a little unexpected, the sounds of those head thudding during their meals were ever so melodious despite being a little annoying. Ah, son, actually, those 2 junior brothers of yours weren't really disrespectful to me. Lin Haoming spoke up for both of them. These 2 were his son's junior brothers. No matter what, they were part of the same sect. If he were to get too extreme with things, his little fan might attract some trouble for himself. The moment Zhou Jun and Wang Yun heard that, they were filled with immense gratitude in their hearts. With that, they thudded their heads even more furiously toward Lin Haoming. To think that at the end of the day, it would be senior brother's father who would speak for them. At the same time, the hatred they had toward Ning Tikan was getting more and more torrential. It was all because of this fella. If not for this fella, they would naturally not have something as such happening to them. Damn it, as long as they could escape out of this sh*t, they would definitely discipline this Ning Tikan properly. Both of you may be spared from death, but you will still be punished accordingly. Do you guys know what you're supposed to do? Lin Fan's voice was calm. However, the entire house fell silent. Lin Hanyu looked at her younger brother in stupefaction. She had not imagined that her younger brother would have grown to such an extent. Those 2 people were inner sect disciples of the Heaven and Earth sect. For a small sect like hers, that was already an esteemed status which they could never hope to compare with. As for her other 3 senior sisters who were standing there, they seemed even more dumbfounded. Not only did they not dare to say anything, they did not even dare to let out a single peep. Everything happening before their eyes right now was already having them shell-shocked to the point they did not know what they could say anymore. Zhou Jun and Wang Yun exchanged glances with one another. They did not have any intention of resisting in their eyes, instead, it was relief. They were relieved that they did not have to die at least. This should be the greatest leniency that their senior brother Lin could have shown to them. If they still could not please senior brother Lin even at this point, they would absolutely deserve it even if they were killed. At this moment, Zhou Jun and Wang Yun stretched out their hands and extended both arms straight. Gritting down on their teeth, their powers rumbled furiously. Crack, N-O-V-E in .C ohm. Severed. To have the father of our senior brother serve as wine, these pair of hands of ours deserve to be severed. There was no bloodied scene at the place. Those pair of hands just dissipated into smoke under the effect of the channeled powers. However, both of them had the strength of immemorial ancient state beings. Therefore, they could regrow their limbs. Scram on one side. After we return, head back to the sect to receive your punishments. Lin Fan said coldly. If he did not show his might right now, things would really go out of hand. When some of the commoners caught sight of what was happening within the house, they exclaimed out. So tyrannical, young Master Lin is way too suave. To think that he would just have both of them sever their arms by themselves. Hue, tyrannical. If not for the fact that Master Lin had spoken of mercy for both of them, I don't think they could have gotten out of it alive. That's over-exaggerating it, isn't it? No matter what, they're from the same sect. What's so great about that? Didn't you see the status of young Master Lin in their sect? Both of them were shocked silly the moment they caught sight of him. Even if young Master Lin were to kill both of them, I'm sure nothing will happen to him at all. That's true as well. I wonder what's going to happen to that last fella now. I heard that he was the young master of some sect or something. He seems to have a pretty high status, doesn't he? The commoners of the Rising Dragon City were discussing fervently right now. Since when had they ever seen such a scene before? Everything that had happened today had their knowledge of the world expanding widely. Thank you for your grace of not killing us, senior brother. Zhou Jun and Wang Yun cried out, their face filled with snot and tears. They were truly petrified in their hearts earlier on. But, when they heard those words of their senior brother Lin, both of them could finally heave out a sigh of relief at that moment. Moving to one side, they lowered their heads and did not dare to speak at all. When the three senior sisters of Lin Hanyu looked at the both of them, their bodies could not help but break out in shivers. This was especially the case for two of those senior sisters. When they recalled their attitude back on the dining table, they felt a cold chill run down their spines. Thankfully, Lin Hanyu was their junior sister. This younger brother of hers should not do anything much to them, right? At the same time, they truly had not expected that Lin Hanyu would have a younger brother as such. If they had known about it, they would have definitely tried to build a closer relationship with her. They would definitely not have acted as they did till today. They couldn't help but feel an immensely deep regret. At this moment, Lin Fan stood before Ning Tikan, who was drenched with sweat from head to toe, feeling impossibly afraid in his heart. When he looked at the former's eyes, he felt as though his entire soul was being sucked right into them. Ning Tikan's nerves were in such a wreck that he was stuttering uncontrollably. He was truly frightened within his heart at this moment. He then turned his gaze toward Zhou Jun and Wang Yun, hoping that both of them would speak up for him. However, their faces were indifferent as they ignored him entirely. Senior brother Lin, my father is the Grand Master of the Metal Sword sect. Please spare my life, Ning Tikan said. Right now, the biggest trump card he had was the identity of his own father. He was hoping that the other party could let him off on account of his father. Creak. All of a sudden, Lin Fan raised Ning Tikan up. Does the family of Lin Fan, look like something you can humiliate? Lin Fan asked with an icy voice as his tone was filled with a killing intent. It was as though he could squish Ning Tikan to death at any moment now. The moment Ning Tikan heard these words, all the color drained from his face. Why, you're going to kill me? Ning Tikan could not believe that the other party would truly want to kill him. Zhou Jun and Wang Yun both felt their hearts skip a beat. They knew that senior brother Lin was truly going to kill this Ning Tikan now. HMPH. Remember this. The outcome of humiliating my family is to wash away the sins with your life. At this moment, Lin Fan's killing intent was torrential. As for the masses out there, they were even more taken aback, seeming to be frozen in the face of this scene before them. Chapter 1042 Waiting. Chapter 1042, Waiting. At this moment, everyone present held their breaths. This was especially the case for those three senior sisters of Lin Hanyu whose eyes shone with looks of fear. They had a feeling that something horrifying was really about to happen later on. Are you really going to kill me? Ning Tikan screamed out at the top of his lungs as both his eyes widened like those of a cow. In fact, his voice was almost turning hoarse from it. What now? Is there any reason why I can't kill you? Lin Fan asked coldly. He was totally unbothered by an existence as such. Every single one he killed was one more, and that was it. Even if he had some status to him, so what? Lin Fan would still FCK him to death without discussion. When Ning Tikan heard those words, his entire heart froze up. He could feel the killing intent emanating out of the other party, causing him to scream out, "You can't kill me. My father is the Grand Master of the Metal Sword Sect. Even if the Metal Sword Sect isn't comparable to the Heaven and Earth Sect, you will still regret it if you were to kill me. No, vel, b, in c, ohm." Right now, Ning Tikan was truly frantic in his heart. He was hoping that the other party would consider about this issue and spare his life. However, he was probably going to be disappointed this time around. If Lin Fan were the type of person who would cower in fright, he wouldn't have gotten to where he was in such a short span of time. HMPH. Even if your father were here, it would be of no use at all. It would be better for the Metal Sword Sect to not come and mess with me, in fact. If they did, the only path awaiting them would be death. Lin Fan laughed out coldly as he used some slight strength with his hands. Snap! A crisp, clean sound rang out along with a low growl. However, it was all over in a flash. Ding! Congratulations on killing immemorial ancient state weak chicken. Ding! No experience points gained. Lin Fan glared at the corpse in his hand coldly and wrung his wrist. As he pointed out with his finger, the corpse of Ning Tikan disintegrated into dust that scattered out in the air. Dead. He was really dead. At this moment, everyone was shocked senseless. From the start till the end, Lin Hanyu did not say anything at all. That was because she had long been shocked silly. She had not expected that her younger brother would be this violent. To think that he would not show any bit of mercy at all even though this Ning Tikan was the young master of a sect. Zhou Jun and Wang Yun did not say anything either. This was an outcome they had long expected. Senior brother Lin would definitely not take many things into consideration when he struck out. He would definitely just have the other party dead. Moreover, if the father of Ning Tikan dared to come and create trouble for senior brother Lin, he would definitely not have a good ending either. Ah, son, this wouldn't cause any issues, would it? Lin Haoming let out a look of worry. This was the son of the Grand Master of the Metal Sword Sect. Now that his son had killed this person just like this, wouldn't it cause any accidents or anything? What issues could there be? If the Metal Sword Sect were to not know what's good for them, they would just be seeking their own doom. Lin Fan did not bother about the Metal Sword Sect at all. If they really dared come, he would let them know the true meaning of horror. Furthermore, Lin Fan was lacking in powerful beings who wanted to harass him. The only issue was that Metal Sword Sect was just a small sect. Lin Fan did not know if there would be any powerful beings within it. Meanwhile, the commoners outside were totally stupefied. Young Master Lin is incredible. To think that he would really kill that person. I heard from others that he was the son of the Grand Master of the Metal Sword Sect. Would there be any problems caused by killing someone of that status? How could there be any problems? Didn't you see it for yourself just now? That so-called son of the Grand Master was already so polite to those two earlier on. And then, those two had to kneel and kowtow in fear so badly at the mere sight of young Master Lin for such a long time. That's true. I wonder what the status of young Master Lin is. To think that he would be so incredible that everyone would be so afraid of him. I'm not too clear either. He seems to be one of the Grand Master candidates. Doesn't that mean to say that there's a chance young Master Lin would become the Grand Master one day? Incredible. That's way too incredible. With young Master Lin, the Lin family would definitely rise for sure. That's right. The discussions outside were rife. At this moment, Lin Fan cast his glance toward the three senior sisters standing beside Lin Hanyu. When the three of them caught sight of Lin Fan's gaze, they felt their hearts squeeze tightly as beads of sweat began to pour down their forehead. They were feeling extremely fearful in their hearts. Lin Hanyu knew how frightened her senior sisters were. No matter what, as their junior sister, she could not just stand by idly. Little brother, they are all senior sisters in my sect. They have been caring toward your big sister. Lin Hanyu spoke up. She was starting to feel that it was getting more difficult to see through her little brother. In the past, he was always silent and quiet, different from everyone else. It was only till now that she understood that it was all because her little brother was a supreme paragon. In just a few years' time, he had already grown to such an extent. Son, they are from the same sect as your big sister. Lin Haoming tugged at Lin Fan while saying. Lin Fan nodded his head, forget it. Since you guys have spoken up for them, I'll let this matter be then. Zhou Jun and Wang Yun were standing there in shivers. They were really thrown into a pit by someone today. That Ning Tikan had thought of himself to be quite the somebody. To think that he would have met with a dead end today. Due to the fact that he had pushed both of them into this pit along with himself, there was truly no one to pity his death. However, both of them did not resent senior brother Lin for it at all. After all, if something as such were to happen to anyone, they would not let it go either. Thank you, senior brother Lin. Xiao Yuya spoke up with gratitude, and the other two followed suit. Big brother, you're so amazing now, Lin Liner said excitedly. Lin Fan fondled her head, yeps. When there's time, I'll bring you over to the sect as well and have you join our heaven and earth sect. The moment Lin Haoming heard this, he was stunned. Ah, son. The heaven and earth sect is a big sect. Can they let just anyone join just like that? Lin Fan chuckled out, this isn't anything much. Zhou Jun and Wang Yun spoke up at this moment, senior brother Lin is the Grand Master candidate of our sect. It's definitely no issue for him to bring some people back in. Lin Haoming was elated right now. To think that their Lin family would have produced such a character. This was a matter of great pride on their ancestors' tomb. As for the other remaining 7 family heads, their eyes shone with a bright glint as well. If that were indeed possible, wouldn't they be able to pull people from their own families into the heaven and earth sect as well? However, they naturally kept those thoughts in their minds for now. They'd wait for an opportune moment to speak with Lin Haoming about this. After all these years, their relationships were pretty decent. They should most likely not be rejected for it. At the same time, after this matter, they were even more certain that they would have to support the Lin family keenly from now on. The Lin family of today was incomparable from its past stature. It wasn't something they could hope to compare with. As long as Lin Fan were to not fall, the Lin family would definitely reign over the land for centuries to come. What could the mere rising dragon city amount to? They might even be able to reign supreme over the endless mainland one day. But that naturally required time to come to fruition. However, all of them believed that that was something bound to happen one day. After everyone dispersed, Lin Fan headed back into the house. Right now, he wanted to wait for the other party to descend. Since Ning Tikan was killed by him, the Metal Sword sect would definitely head here to check it out. But, that was fair as well. He'd just see what the situation would be like later on. In another house, Lin Hanyu was being surrounded by her 2 senior sisters. Right now, she was a big character in their eyes. Even though she was only an outer sect disciple in their sect, her younger brother was a Grand Master candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect. That was something absolutely incredible. Xiao Yuya stood outside and maintained an astonished expression. She then took out a talisman and burned it to transmit her voice with it. She had to report this matter back to the sect. If she were to let things continue progressing as such, there was a chance that junior sister Lin would leave the sect and join the Heaven and Earth sect instead. Chapter 1043 Striking Out Following a Single Disagreement. Chapter 1043 Striking Out Following a Single Disagreement. A few days later, the entrance of the Lin family was like a marketplace where people would gather to hang out and observe at every single moment of the day. Not only had young Master Lin returned, he had made such a strong return at that. It was just absolutely earth-shattering and jaw-dropping. All the commoners naturally wanted to catch a glimpse of young Master Lin's splendor. However, after crowding at the entrance for the past few days, they did not manage to catch sight of young Master Lin at all. That was something that had them slightly disappointed. But on second thought, what sort of an existence was young Master Lin? How could they possibly see him as and when they wanted? As for Lin Hanyu's 3 senior sisters, they could see him really often now. If this was any normal time, they would definitely lecture these commoners who were crowding around like this. But, given the current circumstances, they would not dare to do so even if they had 10 guts. Even when they had to head out, they were all smiles and amicable, without daring to engage in any insolent acts. One particular day, the sky above the rising dragon city were azure blue. But, just at this moment, a clattering sound of weapons rang out. Many of those commoners raised their heads. All they saw was the void gradually turning darker as countless weapons floated there, covering the entire sky densely. A deep and sharp aura surged through the void, so boundless that it could rattle one's heart. This was especially the case with those weapons that had lined the entire sky now. Amongst them, a particularly gigantic weapon floated gently up in the void. It shone with a bronze gleam, and was filled with an ancient aura. B-starred, who was the one who killed my son? Get the FCK out. A tremendous voice boomed out in the void. The weapons that were floating there started to vibrate tremendously as they let out a reverberating sound. N-O-V-E in .C ohm. All the commoners were quite fearful right now. What's that? I've got no idea. Could they be here to seek young Master Lin for revenge? That seems to be the case. How in the world are those swords managing to float up in the void? Could there be some immortal who has descended? It seems like the metal sword sect is here for vengeance. Young Master Lin doesn't seem to have left since that day. It's as though he was waiting patiently because he knew that the other party would come. Lin Hanyu raised her head as her face was filled with a look of worry. She did not know if her younger brother would be a match for them. Even though the metal sword sect could not be compared with the heaven and earth sect, they were still an entire sect no matter what. And looking at the situation right now, they did not seem as though they were anything to be looked down upon. Who knew, they might even be sending their entire sect down. At this moment within the void were a few elderly beings who were standing on top of that bronze-colored longsword. Amongst them was a man with a square face. His skin sported a bronze tan and his gaze were like that of a god, glaring at the rising dragon city below with a death stare. At the moment of Ning Tikan's death, his name token had exploded instantly. That naturally caused Ning Yuanjian to feel enraged beyond anything else. With that, he brought some of the elders of his sect over for the sake of killing the other party cruelly. Come out, Ning Yuanjian bellowed once more. This bellow of his was like a sharp sword that sliced out at the rising dragon city furiously. As for the mere mortals here, he did not give a sh*t about them. Even if he were to massacre this entire city, it would not appease the anger in his heart. However, Ning Yuanjian forgot that this was the territory of the Heaven and Earth sect. If he had remembered that, he wouldn't have acted as brazenly as he just did. At this moment, the commoners who had raised their heads up toward the void started feeling frantic. What are those? They seem to be targeting us. Save me. Young Master Lin, save our lives, the commoners exclaimed out in fear. Those longswords in the void materialized out of nowhere. During their descent, the void was even filled with crackling and exploding sounds. It's good that you're here. At this moment, a voice burst forth from the Lin family and a gigantic hand covered the entire rising dragon city all of a sudden. It then took all of those attacks into its palms, and with a slight strength, crushed them completely, causing the energies to scatter away. Lin Fan's figure then came out of the Lin residence before floating up in the void quietly. It's young Master Lin. Young Master Lin is here. This time around, we're going to be safe. Xiao Yuya raised her head up into the void and let out a startled expression. She had not expected the metal sword sect to actually send so many people. Ning Tikan's father had arrived along with some other elders. This was a tremendous amount of might gathered there. She did not know whether even Hanyu's younger brother could handle this. At this moment, Lin Fan looked at the few people up in the void while his lips curled into a grin. Not bad indeed. They truly did not let him down. 6 powerful beings. One of them was a golden immortal full cultivation state being, while there were 4 golden immortal state upper level beings. While there was no way the metal sword sect could compare with the heaven and earth sect, for them to possess such a formidable force, they could already be considered a pretty strong existence out there. At this moment, there was only a single thought in Lin Fan's mind: he wanted to kill all of them. With that, his strength would most probably be raised by a significant amount. You are the one who killed my son? Ning Yuanjian asked sternly. Lin Fan chuckled out without answering his question directly. Instead, he let out a gleeful expression: seems pretty decent. That's enough, I suppose. What do you mean by that? Ning Yuanjian's face changed, not understanding what the other party was talking about. But all of a sudden, Lin Fan moved from his position. His body instantly transformed into a long streak of light that bolted out to kill Ning Yuanjian and the others. You're courting death. Ning Yuanjian had not expected that the other party would actually strike out following a single sentence of disagreement. He was evidently not prepared for this. Lin Fan roared out as the heavenly dragon's music burst forth. That mighty soundwave caused all of the weapons floating up in the void to break apart. Given Lin Fan's current strength as a golden immortal, when he used the heavenly dragon's music, the force sent forth was formidable, just like an unparalleled mystic skill. At this moment, Lin Fan's gaze was locked onto a particular elder: you shall be the first to die. Lin Fan's lips curled into a grin as he slapped out with his palm. Doomsday's Calamity. This mystic skill was one of Lin Fan's best. Even though it was a mystic skill that he had learned back in the ancient saint world, after cultivating it for such a long time now, he had cultivated it to the point of Dao long ago. It now belonged in the realm of the unparalleled mystic skills. Instantly, the entire sky turned pitch black as the aura of Doomsday descended, shrouding the entire world while rumbling out. The spirit chi extinguished immediately once it made contact with the aura of Doomsday. Even the void was being eaten up by that aura. That one single move seemed to be capable of eroding every single being between the heaven and earth. A doomsday calamity god spirit howled out in rage and bellowed. The face of that elder changed starkly as he slapped out repeatedly with both palms, as though he was trying to deploy some unparalleled mystic skill of his own. Suppress! Lin Fan roared out. The powers in his body were just like a vast ocean that gushed out in a berserk fashion, engulfing that elder entirely. So what if he was a golden immortal full cultivation state being? Even though that cultivation state was quite a bit higher than Lin Fan's, the latter's comprehension of his own skills had reached a horrifying extent over the 3-years-long battle with the boundless future Buddha Lord. In the next instant, a tragic cry rang out. That elder was shrouded in a doomsday aura immediately, and that golden immortal body of his began to crumble. The laws of golden immortals did not stand a single chance of resisting under the might of this doomsday aura. ****************** Ning Yuanjian had not expected that things would turn out as such. To think that one of his elders would be taken down by the other party the moment they met. Lin Fan chuckled out, "Don't get hasty now. Take your time, you guys will be up next." 5 Elements Sword Will, Infinite Swords Fusion. Lin Fan's eyes shone with a bright flash as he pointed out his finger. A single sword will that surpassed everything bolted out of his body into the skies and tore through the void, slashing out toward yet another elder. Aren't you guys the Metal Sword Sect? Let's see how you guys deal with attainments of the sword today. Chapter 1044 This is a little interesting now. Chapter 1044. This is a little interesting now. Lin Fan was an existence that had a super cheat mode on. Ever since he had learned the 5 elements sword will from the Heaven and Earth sect, he had fused it together with his own sword will, creating an even more mysterious sword will from there on. The moment he deployed it, a supernatural might was generated along with it. That bearded elder felt his heart skip a beat. However, by the time he had reacted to it, all he saw was a single figure appearing before him. That seemingly normal finger of the other party was expanding before his eyes rapidly. At the same time, he could sense a sword will that he had never seen before in his life emitting from that fingertip. Ding! The finger was pointed at the forehead of the bearded elder, and a series of ripples circled out. Shing! Brazen! Ning Yuanjian roared out. Along with a few other elders, he sent out a few strange-looking sword wills to kill Lin Fan. Ha ha ha! Lin Fan retreated immediately as he stood up in the void gently, his hands clasped behind his back. I've got to say that's pretty disappointing. Even though he's a golden immortal state upper-level being, his potential is simply far too low. No wonder why so many supreme paragons can skip levels and kill powerful beings now. At this moment, Lin Fan truly understood why supreme paragons could kill powerful beings who were at higher states than themselves. It was because for the sake of raising their cultivation states faster, some people had forsaken their foundations entirely. Hence, compared to some supreme paragons, the difference ended up being simply way too great. In the Rising Dragon City, Lin Hanyu's 3 senior sisters were long flabbergasted. So strong. In their eyes, Lin Hanyu's younger brother was simply way too strong. To think that he would be going about with such ease even when fighting against the Grand Master of the Metal Sword Sect along with some other elders. And just at this moment, something even more shocking happened before their eyes. The bodies of those 2 elders suddenly started undergoing a huge change. The elder who was infected with the Doomsday Aura was suddenly screaming out tragically as though his body had been invaded by something that made it decay swiftly. His laws of golden immortals were breaking down rapidly in the void before turning into rocks that disintegrated into dust and scattered into the universe. How could this be? That elder might have never imagined that he would be taken down by a single move of the other party. Hooey! Lin Fan chuckled out. How could a single move of his be that simple? The descent of Doomsday was never something simple, especially when it was bringing along with it the power of Bigra. Even if the other party wanted to use their powers to defend against it, they would stand no chance at all. Ding! Congratulations on killing Golden Immortal State upper level being. Ding! Experience points plus. When Ning Yuanjian caught sight of everything before him, he shouted out, Elder Hu. However, Elder Hu had truly died just like that. He didn't even have the ability to reincarnate his consciousness at this moment. Ning Yuanjian glared at Lin Fan madly. But at that very moment, the bearded elder started wailing out miserably as well. When Lin Fan had pointed out with his finger, an extremely frightening sword will had penetrated into the body of the other party. Creak! At that moment, a snapping sound rang out. With his head pushed up, a bright burst of light erupted from the forehead of that bearded elder before shooting to the heavens. Bam! Bam! His body ruptured in the next moment, causing countless holes to appear on it with beams of sword lights shining out of them one after another. The entire body of the bearded elder convulsed as though he was unable to withstand this boundless sword will. Arg! The cries were relentless. The body of the bearded elder was just like a porcupine right now, being torn apart by the sword will. Bam! In the next instant, he exploded and vanished away into the heaven and earth like smoke. Ding! Congratulations on killing Golden Immortal State upper level being. Ding! Experience points plus. Ding! Cultivation state leveled up. Cultivation state. Golden Immortal State middle level. At this moment, Lin Fan could feel his body's strength rising once again. It was especially the case for the laws of Golden Immortals, which had become even more robust and thicker by quite a few times compared to before. This was a change in the quality of his foundation. Pleasurable, truly pleasurable. The fastest way of leveling one's cultivation state was indeed by killing. He had to battle all the powerful beings between the heaven and earth in order to reach the pinnacle. On the other side, the fall of 2 of his elders made a huge impact on Ning Yuanjian. He had brought along 6 people, but only 4 were remaining right now. This was a truly huge blow for the Metal Sword sect. At the same time, Ning Yuanjian could not believe that the strength of this man before him would actually be this formidable. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Lin Hanyu and the others were long watching everything with wide open jaws. 2 of the elders from the Metal Sword sect had fallen. In fact, they did not even know how those 2 died. There was no apocalyptic battle that happened, just a few simple actions that had those 2 elders ending up dead. At what sort of a level was this strength? How could it be this horrifying? All of those commoners raised their heads, having forgotten all about time and everything else. They were just completely drawn in by what was happening up in the void. This was the first time they were witnessing a fight between immortals. There was no sight of an entire world being destroyed with a single move. And yet, those people died extremely horrendous deaths. This was especially the case for that person who was pierced through by an infinite number of swords. In their eyes, that was an ever so majestic sight. Lin family's courtyard. Son, good luck, fight on. Lin Haoming was excited beyond words right now. Incredible, way too incredible. However, Mrs. Lin's face was filled with worry. As for Lin Lanur, she was shouting and yelling. She felt that her big brother was truly way too tyrannical. On the other side, the other 7 family heads were equally dumbstruck. This was what a true battle should be like. At the moment of the Metal Sword sect's descent, how mighty did their forces seem. But, in the blink of an eye, the Metal Sword sect had already lost 2 elders. This was something that had all of them feeling terror from deep within. It was no ordinary terror, but an absolute one. Grandmaster, the opponent is way too strong. The remaining elders of the Metal Sword sect spoke up. Ning Yuanjian's face was grim right now as a burst of raging flames blazed from within his heart, tribute swords to kill the enemy. At this moment, Ning Yuanjian roared out as that bronze-colored skin of his shone with a brilliant gleam. This gleam of light shrouded the entire world as his figure started getting blurry. To think that he would actually deploy some incredible mystic skill that would have him fuse with that gigantic bronze sword beneath him. At this moment, the bronze sword started trembling violently. Those initially shallow imprints on its body started floating out as an ancient sword will burst forth from it. The remaining 3 elders tensed their faces up, then formed a triangular formation, causing the laws of Golden Immortals to revolve around the world. Tribute sword. Boom! A burst of light shot up into the heavens, causing an extremely formidable power to shroud the entire world. Seeing this, Lin Fan's lips curled into a grin. Interesting. This was simply way too interesting. That bronze sword was an immortal weapon. To think that someone would possess a mystic skill as such to enable a fusion with the immortal weapon so as to bring forth an even more immense power. At this moment, the power of the bronze sword was getting more and more immense. Just a slight movement could cause the entire void around it to explode out. This was a boundless sword will that could slice through the void and destroy everything in its path. B*****T. Today, I'll use your life as compensation to wash away the humiliation that the Metal Sword sect has endured. Ning Yuanjian's enraged voice roared out from within the bronze sword. Interesting, truly interesting indeed. Come at me if you want. Lin Fan laughed out loudly. Level up. At this moment, the power of the bronze sword suddenly broke through from its golden immortal full cultivation state to an even higher state. Ancestor immortal state lower level. A fight as such that spanned through different cultivation states was simply way too tyrannical. Chapter 1045 Brain Dead. Chapter 1045, Brain Dead. Ancestor Immortal Realm was right after the Golden Immortal Realm. Once one reached that cultivation state, they would practically share their lives with the heaven itself. Even if they wanted to, it wouldn't be easy for them to die. For Ning Yuanjian and the others to have a strength of this extent after fusing with the bronze sword was something that was pretty astounding. If not for the fact that there were 2 elders who were killed by Lin Fan instantaneously, this strength might have even been slightly more formidable. Lin Fan could feel the amount of power emanating forth from that bronze sword, which was way too rich. This was no normal density here. Given the situation right now, Lin Fan did not dare to claim that he would be able to take down the other party. However, that didn't matter, he would only know the outcome after striking out. At this moment, Lin Hanyu and the others let out a horrified expression. The aura of the ancestor immortal realm shrouded the entire world and crushed down. They could feel as though they were floating in a vast ocean right now where a single wave could swallow them up whole. That bronze sword is an immortal weapon. For them to fuse with that immortal weapon at this moment, I wonder what sort of might that would produce. The Metal Sword sect's most powerful mystic skill is to fuse with their immortal weapons and burst forth with the most powerful force possible. This time around, I'm afraid that things are probably going to get dangerous. No vel b in .c ohm. B starred sh*t. How dare you kill my child? I'll have you die today. The berserk voice of Ning Yuanjian emanated out of the bronze sword, shaking the entire world due to its boundless rage. Lin Fan placed his hands behind his back with a calm expression, unbothered by it. Not too bad. This mystic skill of yours is pretty interesting indeed, for you to fuse with an immortal weapon and raise your own strength with its help temporarily. Given your ancestor immortal state lower level strength right now, if you guys were out anywhere in the endless mainland, you could probably be considered as one of the top powerful beings. Slay. All of a sudden, that bronze sword stood upright and sliced out gently. The void in its path was just like a thin piece of paper that was shredded as it pushed right down. Lin Fan raised his hand and his powers rumbled out furiously, pushing back against that sword will. Bam, bam, with that, a berserk amount of power exploded out. Lin Fan stumbled back for a few steps as his face tensed up. This was truly formidable indeed. With his current power, this force might truly be something he could not win against. Ha ha ha, a series of frenzied laughter cried out, what else have you got? This time around, I'm going to have you killed for sure. Since you killed my son, you shall just have to pay with your life then. Lin Fan shrugged his shoulders. So troublesome, he wondered what he could do in the given situation. At this moment, Lin Fan's mind started whirling as he pondered about what he could use to kill the other party. After fusing with the bronze sword, the amount of power sent forth was truly far from ordinary. He truly had to think up of a good method and give it a shot. I'm going to slice down your flesh one piece after another. Not only that, I'm going to extend your death slowly and drag it out by 10,000 years so that you will have a fate worse than death. Ning Yuanjian roared out as the bronze sword started shrinking down until it was of the same size as any normal longsword. Not only did the strength not diminish after shrinking, it seemed as though it had even grown. Shrinking implied concentration. Seemed like this theory was right indeed. Pishu. All of a sudden, that bronze sword disappeared from the face of the world. This speed surpassed everything, such that one was unable to make clear of everything with their eyes. However, Lin Fan could make out every single move nice and clear. This was truly a lightning-fast speed indeed. Most likely, even a golden immortal full cultivation state being would be killed by it in an instant. Shing! The void trembled slightly as Lin Fan lowered his head. The sword had suddenly appeared above his head and bolted right past. If he had only been slightly slower, his brains would most likely have been spilled by it. So sharp, so fierce, what a speed, dodging it, you will not be able to dodge forever. Ning Yuanjian laughed out in a deranged manner. The sword suddenly took on a myriad of crafty changes. Lin Fan was slightly taken aback as he did not expect it to have such capabilities. Shing, pierce, and just like that, the bronze sword had penetrated through Lin Fan's body. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, Ning Yuanjian laughed out maniacally. Lin Fan lowered his head. At the very moment when the bronze sword had penetrated his body, a sword will seeped into his body, mincing his laws of golden immortals in him to dust. How about now? Your death has arrived, Ning Yuanjian roared out in laughter. But when he caught sight of that smug smirk on Lin Fan's face, his expression changed. Lin Fan grabbed onto that sword before grinning out, you're dead. Huh, Ning Yuanjian was stunned, not understanding what the other party meant by that. Heaven and earth smelt. At this moment, Lin Fan's lips curled into a grin. He had not expected this chance to come this quickly. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, a chance when this guy would finally pierce him. Shing! The heaven and earth smelt appeared out in the world instantly. From this day forth, the metal sword sect shall turn into a trash sect. Lin Fan declared as he leapt right into the heaven and earth smelt. All of a sudden, Ning Yuanjian was completely flabbergasted. What is this place? The insides of the smelt had him totally stumped, unable to figure out where he was right now. At this moment, Lin Fan hollered out and held his breath while pulling the sword out of his body. Even though breaking through to Ancestor Immortal Realm from Golden Immortal Realm had resulted in a rise in strength, the other party's sword will was still too far off when compared to Lin Fan's. If they wanted to decimate his physical body with just that level of sword will, they would absolutely just be dreaming. Do you think that you can just seal me in here? That is just seeking your own humiliation. Slay! Ning Yuanjian bellowed out as the bronze sword started generating all sorts of explosions within the heaven and earth smelt. Bam! Bam! Gigantic booms arose from the clash of the bronze sword and the heaven and earth smelt's walls. Lin Fan was surprised at this sight, as though he had not imagined Ning Yuanjian to be this tyrannical. If this guy were to bug him constantly, he might probably have had to endure quite a bit of annoyance. But now that this fellow was just striking out at the heaven and earth smelt instead, wasn't he just giving Lin Fan an opportunity to escape? Stealth. Lin Fan entered his stealth mode and headed toward the entrance of the heaven and earth smelt. Opening the lid, he snuck out swiftly. Out in the void, Lin Fan stood on top of the heaven and earth smelt and heaved out a sigh of relief. To think that things would have gone this smoothly. Bam! Ning Yuanjian was still rampaging within the heaven and earth smelt. To think that a mere little smelt would wish to keep me inside here. Slay. Just what in the world is up with this sh*t? To think that I can't slice through it at all. B***sh*t. Where are you? Damn it. Come on out. ... A series of enraged howls burst forth from within the heaven and earth smelt. Lin Fan stood on top of the heaven and earth smelt and blinked then looked at the wound on his chest. The mythical parasol tree burst out with some life force, helping him heal quickly. To think that it would be this easy. Ancestor Immortal Powerful Being, I guess this is it then. Refine, Lin Fan commanded calmly. This was probably his smoothest attempt in utilizing the heaven and earth smelt thus far. Within the smelt, this Ning Yuanjian had chosen to go chop the heaven and earth smelt itself instead of bothering him. That was something that could only be achieved by a brain-dead retard. Brain-dead. Arg hhhhhhh. As the refinement began, a series of miserable shrieks rang out from within the heaven and earth smelt. What's this? Let me out. Dogs *t. How dare you play dirty with me? You degenerate. Gradually, the voices turned softer. Lin Fan, on the other hand, was filled with anticipation. He wondered what sort of an outcome this would bring for him. Chapter 1046 Depend on Himself. Chapter 1046, Depend on Himself. Pleasurable. The heaven and earth smelt was a toy gifted by the system, a legendary weapon for crafting weapons. Moreover, not only could this heaven and earth smelt refine weapons, but anything in this world that was cast within it. The only thing was that Lin Fan did not know what sort of an item Ning Yuanjian and the others would be turned into. If he did not use this heaven and earth smelt and chose to exchange blows with an ancestor immortal state powerful being instead, that might truly have had been dangerous and the victor couldn't have been determined easily. But, it was a real pity for Ning Yuanjian that there were too many tricks up Lin Fan's sleeves. The heaven and earth smelt aside, even his Bigra was extremely powerful. Once he deployed that, it would definitely bring forth a supernatural amount of power. Ding! Congratulations on refinement success. Ding! Crafted. Puppet God Soldiers, Sword Man. Lin Fan was stunned as though he could not recover to his senses. What in the world was this Sword Man *t? Sword Man. Unique item. Using an immortal weapon as a foundation, the sword Dao and a powerful being's essence, spirit, and vitality is infused into the immortal weapon. Chance of crafting is 1/10,000th. Lin Fan spread his arms and opened up the heaven and earth smelt, causing a bronze longsword to bolt out from within. This bronze sword looked extremely curious and had a pair of hands and legs. It was a literal sword man. Not only that, its cultivation state was pretty extraordinary. To think that with the refinement of the heaven and earth smelt, it had even reached the ancestor immortal state middle level. This was simply heaven revolting. As Lin Fan opened his palm, the limbs of the sword man disappeared and it turned into an ordinary bronze sword that flew to him. The sword man had the craftiness of 100 soldiers and was decisive in killing. This was devious and sinister weapon. Lin Fan flicked his wrist and sent the sword flying up into the void, bringing along a streak of light with it. Just stay here and guard over the rising dragon city properly then. The long streak of light turned downward and the sword man dug deep into the ground. A brilliant sword will then surge forth into all directions around the rising dragon city, wrapping it up within. Source sealing technique. Utmost sword will. Lin Fan was still really concerned about the safety of the rising dragon city. Given his current strength and his attainments toward sealing, a seal laid down by him was truly something that most ordinary people could not break through at all. Even if a powerful being wanted to break through it, they would have to spend some effort on it. Honestly, this metal sword sect was just courting death. They might not have known which sect's territory this rising dragon city was even until this point. What's going on with the situation right now? The masses of the rising dragon city were filled with bewilderment. They did not know what was happening here. The sight that was up in the void earlier on had them lost within it for a long, long time, as they were unable to return to their senses. Check it out, young Master Lin is back. Where have those people gone to? Could they have all been defeated by young Master Lin? Lin Fan landed down from the void and returned to the Lin family. Ah, son, what just happened? Lin Haoming came forth while asking perplexedly. He did not know what the general situation was, but the scene from earlier on already had them all scared silly. It's all right, everything has been settled, Lin Fan said with a grin. Right now, this rising dragon city was definitely not to be underestimated, with an ancient immortal state middle-level powerful being watching over it. If any ordinary person were to find out about it, they would definitely be so shocked that their eyes would open wide. This would just frighten the life out of normal people. Big brother, I knew that you're the strongest, Lin Lan'er said excitedly. When do you want to head over to the Heaven and Earth sect? Lin Fan asked. Lin Lan'er hesitated for a moment before giving off a bright, sweet smile. No hurries. I still want to stay at home for a bit longer. Lin Fan did not have much expectation toward these things. Even though he was someone who had reincarnated over, since he had some relationship with this Lin family, he would naturally look after them and care for them. If he were to reign supreme over the entire world one day, even if this Lin family were made up of complete trashes, they would still remain prosperous for all eternity. But, if he were to fall, even if they were to join the Heaven and Earth sect, it would not be of much use. The next day, Lin Fan was prepared to leave the rising dragon city. He had been delayed here for quite a bit of time now, and was anxious to head out and play for a little. He had gotten wind of some places worth checking out from the sect. Perhaps, he might be able to raise his strength once he went there. At this moment, there were two women standing before Lin Hanyu and the others. Even though these two women looked young on the surface, they were actually pretty old in actual age. After one's cultivation states were raised, they could ensure that their facial features remained the same forever. While most women would like to remain young, there were some who would like to take on the features of elderly women, as they felt that it would probably give them a more authoritative feel. As for these two women, they were the Grand Master and an elder of the 100 Flower sect respectively. After Xiao Yuya sent over the news, the Grand Master of the 100 Flower sect was naturally concerned about it. She had not expected that an outer sect disciple of her sect would come from such a family background where her younger brother was one of the Grand Master candidates for the Heaven and Earth sect. That was a status of paramount importance back in the Heaven and Earth sect. Within the Endless Mainland, there were many sects. However, only a few of them could be considered and addressed as major sects. If one wanted to pull some connections with these major sects, it wasn't as easy as it sounded. The reason for the Grand Master's arrival was to try and persuade Lin Hanyu to stay within the sect. That was the only way for the other party to ever pay some attention to their sect. Grand Master, Lin Hanyu and the others greeted politely. The Grand Master of the 100 Flower sect beamed with a wide smile on her face as she stepped forth. Hanyu, the sect has treated you decently. You must not leave our sect. Her words were just so straightforward and overbearing. Lin Hanyu froze for a moment, naturally understanding the intent behind her Grandmaster's words. She then nodded her head. Don't worry, Grandmaster. Back then, Hanyu's life was saved by the sect. Therefore, I will definitely not leave the sect. Good, good. The Grandmaster of the 100 Flower sect was extremely happy. Lin Hanyu then spoke up again. Grandmaster and Elder, since you guys have come this time around, how about going with me to meet my younger brother? Good, good. This was exactly the purpose of their visit. To be able to make an acquaintance with a Grand Master candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect was a grand affair. Lin family's main hall. When Lin Haoming got to know that these two were the Grand Master and Elder of his daughter's sect, he was naturally polite to them. But, because his son was so incredible, he naturally stood with a straight back and didn't have the feeling of being inferior to them. His son was the Grand Master candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect. That was an extremely distinguished status. Fenrir has left. Lin Haoming said once he found out about the purpose of their visit. Ah, the faces of the Grand Master and Elder of the 100-Flower sect were filled with disappointment. To think that the other party would have left. Hanyu, before your younger brother left, he handed me 2 items to pass over to you. Lin Haoming took out 2 items from within his storage ring. One of them was a lower-grade immortal weapon. This immortal weapon was something that Han Juntian had given to Lin Fan. But, because he had no use for it, he thus had Lin Haoming pass it over to Lin Hanyu instead. Because this lower-grade immortal weapon had been through Lin Fan's personal touch of refining twice, its power had been raised considerably where it could be used both offensively and defensively. Even though this was only a lower-grade immortal weapon, it was definitely enough to match up against a middle-grade immortal weapon. When the Grand Master and Elder of the 100-Flower sect caught sight of this immortal weapon, they were stunned beyond words. This was an immortal weapon. To think that Lin Hanyu's younger brother would be this rich. Even if it were them, they could not help but feel some envy in their hearts over it. The second item was a single pill that could raise one's potential. Right now, this was the most that Lin Fan could do. After all, the Endless Mainland was simply way too dangerous. As long as they did not cause as much trouble as he did, they should practically be safe with these things. As for Lin Fan at this moment, he had long left the Rising Dragon City. In a single blink, he traveled thousands of miles away. This speed was just astonishing and absolutely matchless. After a while, Lin Fan came to a stop. He felt that it was about time for him to start cultivating properly now. The fact that his physical body state had not been raised was something that had him feeling pretty worried. In the past, he needed the help of others for this. But right now, he no longer had that option. He could only depend on himself. Chapter 1047 Veer onto the Path of the Demons. Chapter 1047 Veer onto the Path of the Demons. In the past, because Lin Fan's cultivation wasn't high enough, his physical body state was always higher than his cultivation state, which always troubled him. But, things were different now. Now that his cultivation was strong enough, it was sufficient for him to raise his physical state himself. The scenery of his surroundings right now was pretty decent, so he landed down onto the ground and walked ahead carefully, with no end in sight to the land around him. Lin Fan raised his fist while his powers rumbled out, then hurled out a violent punch toward his chest. Bam! FC King Awesome! Lin Fan let out a pleased face. This was a feeling that was absolutely soothing for him. Ding! Eternal Ancient Imperishable Body Experience Points plus 300,000. Lin Fan burped out slightly and had the blood within his body rumbling out again as though it could burst out at any moment now. The feeling of this punch was indeed pretty decent, giving him a lot of experience points. He felt that if he were to continue thumping just like this, the effect would be pretty good. Yet another punch was sent down, and a reverberating sound exploded out as that massive impact arose. The might of this single thump was nothing to be scoffed at. Ding! Eternal Ancient Imperishable Body has leveled up. Ding! Eternal Ancient Imperishable Body evolved into Eternal Immortal Body. Ding! Congratulations on evolving physical body state, true immortal state lower level. ... Lin Fan felt that he was truly so damned bloody smart. To think that he could think up such a plan. A few days later, Lin Fan's physical body state was already at Mystic Immortal full cultivation state. The speed of this leveling process was extremely fast indeed. Wherever Lin Fan passed by, a huge crater would be formed. This was because each time Lin Fan thumped himself, the power would ripple through his feet and slam out onto the ground. At this moment, there were 2 figures hidden in the endless void. Just what in the world is he trying to do? A middle-aged man who was slightly plump gasped out in astonishment. He had 2 axes behind his back which shone with an extremely sharp glint. It was as though they could cleave down the entire heaven and earth. They were definitely nothing simple for sure. I've got no idea, however, Grand Master has instructed us to kill this person on his way. But, looking at how he's behaving right now, it is pretty curious indeed. We've already been tracking him for a few days now, yet he's just been thumping his chest day and night. Not only that, the strength which he has been using is only getting greater. Could he have veered onto the path of the devil? The other person had a beard that was just like a wave, extending down all the way to his belly. Right now, his eyes shone with a curious expression. This was a situation that had both of them feeling super perplexed. They had truly not come across someone who would abuse themselves as such. Every single punch thrown down was extremely cruel and possessed the power of golden immortals. We had better be careful. This man is one of the Grand Master candidates. We must definitely be clean in our attacks and make sure he's dead in a single strike. Thereafter, we'll make our escape immediately. The man with 2 axes behind him said cautiously. Understood. At this point, Lin Fan had already noticed that there were people who were hidden in the void. However, he was in no hurry at all. He would not move till the enemy moved. It was time to raise his physical body state before thinking about anything else. But, in order to have these guys trapped in a real pit, Lin Fan still pondered over it while going on with his business. He felt that he must definitely come up with a plan. At this moment, Lin Fan reared his head into the sky and shouted out, "My physical body state is invincible. I will definitely be able to raise my physical body state." Raising a single fist of his up high, he rapped it with the laws of the Golden Immortals. That tremendous power infected the heaven and earth, causing the entire world to dim in the face of its light. He then hammered down with an enraged punch onto his chest. Ugh! Lin Fan spat out a mouthful of fresh blood furiously before continuing on his path of thumping and walking. Haha, good, this is awesome, I'm finally bleeding. Lin Fan laughed out excitedly without reservations, the sound traveling all the way into the void. As for the 2 people who had been hidden in the void the entire time, they were just completely stumped. He must have definitely veered onto the path of the devil. Otherwise, no one else would abuse themselves like him. That's right, I can feel the blood within his body rumbling out furiously. There's a feeling that it's about to erupt out at any moment. N-O-V-E-N.C-O-M. Or perhaps, we might not even have to strike and that fellow would hammer himself to death, eh? Yes, there's a high chance of that happening. However, let's not hurry and take our time. If he doesn't die at the end, all we have to do is deliver the final blow. Alright, to think that one of the Grandmaster candidates of the Heaven and Earth sect would actually cultivate himself into worthlessness right now. He is truly making a big fool out of himself. My physical body state is already invincible right now. Even an immortal weapon would not be able to strike yours truly to death. At this moment, Lin Fan took out the eternal axe and chopped down onto his shoulder. A spurt of blood sprayed out of where he struck. Highs, seems like I haven't perfected my cultivation yet. Time to continue cultivating. Even though the eternal axe had only made a brief appearance, it already had the eyes of the 2 people in the void totally enthralled by it. That axe is an immortal weapon. And by the looks of it, it seems to be a supreme grade immortal weapon. I don't think that's the extent of it. That axe probably surpasses even supreme grade immortal weapons. Didn't you see how the cold flash of the axe sliced through the void and disintegrated everything in its path right when it appeared? Just what sort of a mystic skill has that guy been cultivating such that he would lead himself into such a state? I've got no idea, but in my opinion, it is definitely far from simple. This time around, we're really going to get so lucky. Lady Luck is truly shining upon us. To think that we could bump into something like this. Yet another few days passed. Lin Fan couldn't even recall how many mouthfuls of blood he had spat out by now, but his physical body state had already long reached golden immortal state lower level. For him, this was a complete leap in the quality of his physical base. Right now, the expression that he was giving off was exceptionally awful, and his face was frightfully pale. It was as though he could die at any moment now. Bam, bam, fist after fist, he rained them down on his body constantly. It was so bad that the 2 people up in the void could barely look at him. This was way too miserable. During this period of time, the both of them had been following him intently, and had witnessed the thousands of mouthfuls of blood that the other party had spat out. The world was practically stained with his blood. This was truly beyond miserable. I'm even harboring thoughts of just helping him end his life now. Rather than letting him suffer as such, we might as well make our move and help him head to paradise. There's no hurry, let us wait and see how long more he can endure this. Right now, all the laws of golden immortals are practically destroyed in him. I don't suppose it will be much longer before he will just die. For a Grandmaster candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect to die just like this. Ah, it's truly such a sorrowful fate. That's right. At this moment, Lin Fan was feeling ecstatic in his heart as he sensed the skyrocketing physical body state of his. However, he was pretty surprised as to why the 2 fellas were still not coming out yet. Did they really want to watch yours truly hammer himself to death? These 2 fellas were way too greedy, weren't they? That was truly a little overboard now. But, he might as well forget it. Since that was the case, Lin Fan would do as they wished. Although, given the current situation, he still had to raise his physical body state first no matter what. Yet another few days later, Lin Fan chuckled out in his heart. Under the frightful gaze of those 2 people, Lin Fan sent a fateful punch bearing an infinite power slamming down on his chest. Bam, ding, eternal immortal body leveled up. Physical body state. Golden immortal state middle level. Ugh. At this moment, Lin Fan raised his head straightway and sprayed out his blood in a 180-degree arc. This was the true meaning of painting the skies red with his blood. Thud, Lin Fan collapsed onto the ground. Hell, even the position he fell was ever so graceful and domineering. The two people up in the void were petrified before exclaiming out furiously. Veering into the path of the devil. He's truly dead. Quick, hurry and go check it out. Chapter 1048 Hit and Run. Chapter 1048. Hit and Run. Even though Lin Fan was lying there motionlessly, everything outside was under his control. At that moment, the two hidden immortals landed on the ground, rushing up without much hesitation. There was absolutely no aura around Lin Fan, as if he was dead. This was the system's function of restraining in his aura, which ordinary people would not be able to see through at all. He's dead. To think that he would have really died. Go. Delays would always bring unnecessary problems. Check if there's anything good on him. Let's take it and just leave. Both of them were incomparably excited right now. As ancestor immortal state beings, they would normally not be bothered with any ordinary immortal weapons. However, the immortal weapon that Lin Fan had displayed earlier on was far from ordinary. There was a good chance that it might be an item that went beyond the supreme grade immortal weapon grade. If people could spill guts fighting over a supreme grade immortal weapon, there was no need to imagine how rare it was to find an item as such which could surpass that existence. Both of them stood before Lin Fan and eyed him carefully. Indeed, heroes are born from the youth. Look at how young his bones are and yet his cultivation state is already that high. If he were given the opportunity to continue progressing, he was most likely going to turn into someone outrageous. Hooey, even if that's the case, so what? The endless mainland is so huge, with so many geniuses with exceptional talent. But, how many of them ever get to live till the very end? Yet, I've got to agree that this fella is truly pretty special. Even when compared to that Qin Shungjin of the God Essence sect, they may actually have been equals. To think that he would end up veering onto the path of the devil. If the Heaven and Earth sect knew about this, I wonder how they would feel about it. It must truly be miserable. Hurry up and search him. As the Grand Master candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect, this lad must have a fair amount of treasures on him. At this moment, the two of them started searching. Lin Fan was cussing out in his mind. These Mother Sea King dogs *ts. They were really searching him just like that. Search their mothers PSSIES. He was going to wreck them apart. Where has this lad kept all of his items? That's really strange. Is there nothing in his storage rings? Nopes. I've just taken a look. There's absolutely nothing in his storage rings. Search carefully once more. With that, both of them squatted down and let down their guard. In their minds, this lad had really died after veering onto the path of the devil. Seeing this, Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy. It seemed like it was time for him to shine now. Just at this moment, the faces of these two people changed slightly. That initially excited expression of theirs was frozen solid. They felt as though there was a part of their body that had just received some intense blow. Caught them. A demonic voice rang out in both of their ears. Both of them had their faces alarmed and somewhat menacing right now. Don't move now. Be careful of them blowing up. If they really do blow up because of you moving, you can't blame me. Lin Fan moved his hand ever so slightly, but the amount of strength he had in them was pretty tyrannical nevertheless. Pain. The faces of the two grimaced at this point. All they could feel was an impossible pain surging right into the depths of their hearts. This pain was extreme in the torment that it delivered. No matter how strong their powers were, there was no way they could withstand this. Weren't you already dead? How could you? Their voices were trembling while their teeth chattered as though they had just seen a ghost. Who said that I was dead? I was merely pretending to be dead. The Kunlun God sect is truly far from ordinary. To think that they would have two ancestor immortal state lower level beings to come look for trouble with me. Lin Fan sighed. Why, you're so despicable. The two of them clenched their teeth while saying. However, because the other party was grabbing onto their magical spot, they could not summon even the slightest bit of strength to fight back. Despicable. No, I'm not being despicable. This is just a normal plan. You guys can only blame yourselves for being too stupid. Twisting heaven and earth. At this moment, Lin Fan spoke up, that clean, crisp voice of his reverberating across the heaven and earth gently. This was an extremely simple move, yet, Lin Fan was the only person within the entire universe who could master this skill to such an extent. As for both the targets of the move, it was as though their worlds had crumbled at this very moment. The ground was splitting into countless pieces while the entire sky was being destroyed, turning their world pitch black right now. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. All of a sudden, two extremely anguished voices rang out across the entire world. These voices were tragic and miserable beyond anything that had existed. You are the Grand Master candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect, someone who is upright and just. To think that you would resort to such underhanded and cheap tricks. Despicable, shameless, the two of them screamed out. To think that this fellow would be this underhanded. Both of them were ancestor immortal state powerful beings who could probably reign supreme over a part of the endless mainland. Within the Kunlun God sect, they were the core battle elders. If they were sent to any of the small sects, they would most likely be able to take over as the Grand Master. But, to think that they would have to bear the indignance of being struck by the other party without having even a single chance to fight back. They were filled with indignance toward this unfairness. If the other party had used some absolutely formidable strength to take them down, they would at least be convinced in their hearts. But right now, these despicable methods of the other party had them feeling exceptionally resentful. Lin Fan clapped his hands and looked at the two people lying on the ground while clutching their crotches, then let out an extremely brilliant smile. At this moment, Lin Fan took out the eternal axe and swung it a few times in the air. What are you trying to do? The two of them gasped out in shock. They wanted to fight back, but the pain in their groins rendered them totally immobile. Painful. It was really way too painful. Lin Fan chuckled. What do you guys think? These two ancestor immortal state powerful beings were major bundles of experience points. Whether or not he could level up would have to depend on these two. However, he truly had not expected that the Kunlun God sect would be petty enough to really send people for killing him. But, he might as well let it be then. If they came, all he had to do was just kill them instead. Acts of kindness such as presenting him with experience points was something that had Lin Fan feeling a little emotional, to be honest. You would really dare to kill us? The two of them glared at Lin Fan madly. After all, they had a high status in the Kunlun God sect. What would I not dare? You guys wanted to kill me, and yet I don't have the right to kill you guys instead. Lin Fan raised his axe, prepared to chop down on one of them. But just at this moment, the void trembled slightly. Stop that! A thunderous voice boomed over as though it came from a distant place. When both of them heard that voice, their hearts leapt with joy. Vice Grand Master. Lin Fan frowned. Even though the voice had arrived, the person had yet to arrive. Bloody hell, he had to hasten it up now. Hands up, axe down. Snap, fresh blood sprayed out everywhere. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhh. With that, a tragic cry rang out across the world. The two of them had not expected Lin Fan to truly strike down. Lin Fan's eyes shone with a deranged expression. At a time as such, how could he get soft in his heart? The experience points were clearly lying right before his eyes. If he were to let them go, wouldn't he be taking a huge loss? He did not care about who it was that had arrived. As long as they dared to come, he would kill them all the same. Ding! Congratulations on killing Ancestor Immortal State Lower Level Powerful Being. Ding! Congratulations on killing Ancestor Immortal State Lower Level Powerful Being. Ding! Congratulations on leveling up, Golden Immortal State Upper Level. Lin Fan did not hesitate as he opened his palm to keep all the storage rings of the two, then bellowed out into the void, stop your mother. Come and chase me if you've got the guts. Pishu. With that, a long streak of light bolted into the endless void. The feeling of a hit and run was so damned bloody awesome. Damn it, you're courting death, the Vice Grand Master of the Kunlun God sect roared out as his voice filled the entire void. Lin Fan took a quick glance behind him. What a bloody moron. He had only sent his essence spirit instead of his true body here, and he expected it to be enough to hold down yours truly. This guy must be dreaming. Chapter 1049. This is FC King Bad Now. Chapter 1049. This is FC King Bad Now. Just as that thought bubbled into Lin Fan's mind, he was slapped right in the face for it. The void up ahead of him suddenly started to solidify as though someone had frozen it. No matter how hard he tried, he could not pass through it at all. Slay. Lin Fan was unconvinced as he sent forth a torrential sword will that had been fused with the 5 elements sword will. When it burst forth, a bedazzling sword flash sliced through the void and forced itself within. Creak. Indeed, it ended up being useful. Right now, Lin Fan's strength was nothing to be underestimated. This was especially the case after he had just slain 2 Ancestor Immortal State lower level beings, which had given his strength yet another boost. For someone like Lin Fan who could have already crossed through cultivation levels to kill powerful beings, he could even slay ancestor immortal state beings at this point. However, something that stunned Lin Fan happened at this moment. When the void up ahead was sliced open, a god mountain appeared and blocked his path ahead. For a god mountain to appear up in the void, what kind of insane bullshit was this? The god mountain was humongous, and had a sharp peak. There was even a godly gleam of light that shone and revolved around it in the void. On the peak of the god mountain stood a solitary figure. That figure looked extremely young, one could even say that he was elegant and suave, with an extraordinarily handsome face. However, his dressing style was simple and plain. If there was a spirit in a mountain, he must be an immortal. The Vice Grand Master was fused into the god mountain. It was as though he was the immortal right within this god mountain. You don't have to run anymore. You will never be able to escape. If you had stopped in your tracks just now, perhaps I could have just let things be. You should have never, ever killed the two of them. The Vice Grand Master, Tian Fengling, spoke out calmly. Lin Fan's brows furrowed, HMPH. They wanted to kill me and yet I'm not allowed to kill them. However, I'm finally seeing through you guys. Your Kunlun God sect is truly so darn shameless. To think that you guys would be as petty as this. All I did was take down your Kunlun God sect in the competition, and yet you guys have the guts to send people to reap the life of yours truly. If this was made known to the outside world, everyone would definitely laugh their jaws off. Speaking any more serves no purpose. Even though the voice of Tian Fengling was calm, the wrath in his eyes was endless. While this was only an essence spirit, the aura emanated from it was absolutely apocalyptic, shaking the entire world. As he pointed out with his finger, countless boulders swiveled out of that god mountain. Even though these boulders only gave off a faint glow, they were filled with life. Lin Fan's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't careless at all as he punched out with his fist while his body transformed. Doomsday! An exclamation rang out, as though Tian Fengling had not expected Lin Fan to possess such strength. His killing intent then surged up. A disciple as such could not be allowed to live. Suppress. An illusory figure of a mountain enveloped Lin Fan within as a mysterious aura descended from the skies and restrained him within it. This was apparently a sealing mystic skill. Splitting heaven 3 stances. Lin Fan's wrist flicked as the eternal axe in his hands started dancing. Cleaving out in the form of 3 axe shadows, they subsequently fused into one and slashed outward. Boom. HMPH. Wanna suppress yours truly? You're far from worthy, Lin Fan yelled out. At the same time, he was busy trying to figure out what he should do in his mind. Even though this was only the descent of an essence spirit, the strength associated with it was something that Lin Fan could not deal with as of now. This fella had surpassed the ancestor immortal state. Within every single move of his was the power of heaven and earth. Lin Fan could only break through the opponent's Tao with brute force right now. But, it was hard to say whether the enemy had already been giving it his all or not. On the other side, Tian Fengling was feeling extremely taken aback in his heart. He had not expected the strength of this disciple to be formidable to such an extent. Every single mystic skill he used was an unparalleled mystic skill. A potential of this level was truly unmatched. He must definitely not allow a second Qin Shungjin to appear, especially not in the Heaven and Earth sect. Over 10 years ago, Qin Shungjin's cultivation state was merely at the immemorial ancient state, and he was still on the true immortal substitute role. But, over the past 10 years, this Qin Shungjin had surpassed everyone. Right now, his cultivation state was so profound that no one could guess at it at all. That God Essence sect was even giving off a feeling that it was a cut above all the other major sects right now. Even though the Heaven and Earth sect was formidable, their resources were roughly equal when compared to the Kunlun God sect. And in terms of disciples, the Kunlun God sect even had an edge. But, out of nowhere, the appearance of this one Lin Fan had the Kunlun God sect feeling some pressure. They got to know that this disciple had only joined the Heaven and Earth sect 3 years ago. But to think that he would possess such a cultivation state already. What sort of tyranny and horror was that? He must not be kept alive. Definitely not. Kunlun God Mountain, suppress for all eternity. At this moment, Tian Fengling roared out as he burst forth with all his powers. As a result, a tremendous amount of energy erupted from his body and turned into a tangible river that circulated around the entire heaven and earth, causing a bedazzling gleam of light to shine down upon the world. The pressure in Lin Fan's heart mounted even higher. To think that this Tian Fengling would have even more tricks up his sleeves. Boom, boom, the god mountain that was blocking the path ahead started quaking before uprooting itself and flying out to suppress Lin Fan directly. The 10 fingers of Tian Fengling moved as a series of mysterious runes flew out of his palms and entered the God Mountain. The void cracked and exploded as the boundlessly huge God Mountain gave off a feeling of being absolutely unstoppable. No matter where Lin Fan went to, he was within the region of control of the God Mountain. Holy FCK, Lin Fan cussed out in his heart. He had not expected this Tian Fengling to be this vicious. This endless mainland was truly so darned dangerous, and all the upper echelons of the sects were so darned shameless. "I'll fight it out," Lin Fan roared out, and with both his palms supporting the heavens, he pushed them over to the God Mountain. Boom! A boundless power shot over with such might that Lin Fan's hands were actually trembling, with signs of tearing and breaking. This was really playing it big now. Even though this was only a single strain of Tian Fengling's essence spirit, the strength he possessed was definitely not something that Lin Fan could handle right now. "I'll FCK your mother. You had better just FC King wait and see. If your daddy doesn't whack the SH*T out of you in the future, your daddy will take on your surname." Lin Fan hollered in rage. Boom! The God Mountain slammed down, suppressing all living things. Seeing the scene, Tian Fengling's lips curled into a cold grin. As he swept his robes, the appearance of the God Mountain transformed and gradually took on the shape of a normal mountain peak. No matter who it was, they would definitely not be able to tell the difference between this and the God Mountain from before. Even though Tian Fengling really wanted to kill Lin Fan, he considered the fact that the latter was a Grand Master candidate of the Heaven and Earth sect. If he were to kill this fella, he might very well incur the wrath and vengeance of Han Juntian. Even though they weren't exactly afraid of a single Han Juntian, they knew how sinister and vicious he was back before he took on the position as the Grand Master of the Heaven and Earth sect. He believed that if Han Juntian were to take revenge, he would definitely not head straight for the Kunlun God sect. He would just camp outside the Kunlun God sect and kill every single disciple who went out. At the same time, he would most probably slay every single last Grand Master candidate of the Kunlun God sect as well. By that time, things would be really troublesome. Right now, Tian Fengling was only going to suppress Lin Fan here and isolate him from the outside world. The latter wouldn't be able to transmit his consciousness, neither would there be even a single bit of spirit chi for him to absorb. He would just trap this guy here for 100 years, or maybe even 1,000. Perhaps, he would be totally wasted by that time. After taking a last glance at this God Mountain, Tian Fengling's essence spirit returned to him after dissipating into the void. Under the God Mountain at this time, Lin Fan was cursing out at that guy's mother. "Mother *CKING piece of F *CKING dog *SH*T. Lin Fan could feel as though he was being shackled and couldn't budge even a single inch. This is FC King bad now. Chapter 1050 Digging a Tunnel. Chapter 1050, Digging a Tunnel. Kunlun God Sect. Somewhere in the depths of the endless time and space. That kid has already been suppressed by me. But, it's a pity we lost 2 elders. Tian Fengling said with regret. The Grand Master of the Kunlun God Sect nodded his head. "I had wasted 100 years of my time to lay down a heaven-revolting mystic skill and repress down the Heaven and Earth sect's fortune. Who would have thought that this unforeseen accident would happen for the Heaven and Earth sect to be able to recruit in a disciple who could change their fortune like that? But, things are good now. Even though we can't have him killed, it's good enough to suppress him for 100 years. That's right, after 100 years, he would remain the same while the world would have changed. By then, no matter how heaven-revolting he is, it would be no issue." Tian Fengling laughed out while saying. Sealing the void, isolating his spirit chi, blocking out his consciousness from transmitting messages. "I trust that you have ensured that there are no loopholes, right?" The Grand Master of the Kunlun God sect, Tai Qianshan, asked. "Grand Master, you can rest assured. Even though I've only sent down my consciousness this time around, I've already trapped that kid with the Kunlun God Mountain. Even if Han Juntian himself were to pass through that area, he would definitely not be able to discover and realize that his precious disciple is being trapped under it." Tian Fengling said with confidence. Tai Qianshan nodded his head. "That's good. Right now, the old masters are trying to break through to the Heavenly Lord state and are in a critical stage. Only, no one knows if they'll be able to make it through. That's more difficult than difficult itself. The Heavenly Lord state is mysterious beyond description. Across all of the ancient times, there have been countless ambitious, powerful beings who had tried to break through to the Heavenly Lord state. However, all of them ended in defeat eventually," Tian Fengling said warily. At the same time, he too was yearning to reach that Heavenly Lord state. That was the highest cultivation state in all of the ancient times. As long as one could break through to the Heavenly Lord state, they would be indestructible for all of eternity. Even if the skies were to topple over or the sun and moon were to be destroyed, they would live within the universe, carefree and relaxed. The old masters have already headed over to the ethereal world and are killing countless of demonic gods to cultivate great immortal great elixirs. There should be a good chance of it. As long as the Kunlun God sect can have a single Heavenly Lord as a backing, we shall reign supreme across the entire endless mainland. But, even if they can't break through the barriers of the Heavenly Lord state, the Kunlun God sect must suppress the Heaven and Earth sect no matter what. Tai Qianshan said. That's of course. Recently, that Qin Shungjin of the God Essence sect has come over seeking the use of our Kunlun God fire to cultivate his mystic skill. With that, we've already come to an agreement. Once the treasure secret ground opens up, he can allow the Kunlun God sect to have 3 disciples entering that place. As for the 3 disciples, we've got to deliberate on our candidates properly. Tian Fengling said. Highs, to think that the God Essence sect could have actually uncovered a prodigy such as that Qin Shungjin. Rumors have it that Qin Shungjin possesses the greatest treasure key in the entire endless mainland, which is coveted by many. Hell, even the people in the God Essence sect themselves are coveting it. But now that Qin Shungjin has already grown considerably strong, even the God Essence sect does not dare to rein him in too tightly, lest this golden chicken of theirs decides to leave them. By then, their losses would be tremendous. Tai Qianshan added on. But, Qin Shungjin naturally knows of these things. Right now, we're scheming alongside a tiger, but the Qin Shungjin is doing exactly the same thing. That's why we've got to hurry our Grand Master candidates back so that they can follow him into the treasure ground. Tian Fengling was thinking hard in his mind. The strength of this Qin Shungjin was extraordinary. He would definitely not allow someone of their level to accompany him into the treasure ground. That was a concern of Qin Shungjin as well. If he were to allow people like Tian Fengling and the others to enter with him, he would not be able to maintain control over them. At this moment, under the Kunlun God Mountain, Lin Fan cried to the heaven and the earth, but to no avail no matter what. He was feeling a little exasperated in his heart right now. Even though his powers were rumbling, there seemed to be some mysterious aura that this Kunlun God Mountain possessed, locking his powers within his own body entirely and preventing him from pushing them out. The source of power gushed out and burst forth. His strength was even enough to move mountains and rivers right now. But despite that, there was no reaction from this God Mountain at all. Evidently, this couldn't work. Bloody hell, that FCKER is simply way too bloody savage. Lin Fan wasn't afraid of anything except for the other party playing dirty and sealing him like this. Therefore, the current situation right now was the one which Lin Fan was the most afraid of. The connate element of earth was his great tool for digging into the ground. But at this moment, there was no use to it at all. The entire earth was being shrouded by a bright beam of light such that he couldn't do anything at all. Mother *C King Kunlun God Dog Sect. You had better not let your daddy come out. Otherwise, I'll definitely fight with you guys all the way to the end. Lin Fan roared in his heart that was filled with hate. He had not expected that the beings of the Kunlun God sect would truly be this shameless. Since the weaker beings couldn't do anything, the powerful beings came to take him down immediately without even a single bit of hesitation. They didn't even try to beep him with nonsense, giving him no time to react at all. If that fella had wasted more of his breath on him, he might perhaps have been able to come up with a plan to escape or something. But as people said, man plans, God intervenes. This was the true beginning of his misery right now. He had to think up of a way to get out of this place quickly. Otherwise, if he were to be sealed here for 100 years or even longer, he would really be FCKED. That group of people from the ancient saint world were still awaiting his salvation. He could not afford any delays right now. Flying heavens. Lin Fan had initially wanted to take out this legendary weapon that specialized in drilling holes so that he could bore a hole through this god mountain or whatnot. But to his utter surprise, Flying Heavens was just stuck there without being able to move at all. Kunlun God Mountain. Item of Tian Fengling's true body that has been cultivated to an immortal weapon of his own life. Grade. Supreme grade immortal weapon. Able to suppress all living beings in the world, and is as heavy as a part of the heaven and earth itself. Making use of the system, Lin Fan checked out the properties of this Kunlun God Mountain. He knew that his consciousness had already been sealed in this place completely, and there was no way he could seek external help. However, he wasn't someone who would admit defeat just like that. No matter what methods he had to face, he would have to give it a shot. Pills through thought. At this moment, Lin Fan's hands moved slightly. He had to see if this would work at all. The flames of pills through thought could burn through everything, just like the heaven and earth smelt could refine everything. However, this ball of flames was slightly less useful because it could not leave his body and only remain burning on top of his palms. He could only deploy it on opponents to affect them under special circumstances. Sizzle, crackle, burn. The flames surged out, and when they made contact with this Kunlun God Mountain, something that excited Lin Fan happened. The part of the God Mountain above his palm suddenly had a hole burned through it. Holy FCK, I've got a plan now. At this moment, Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy, haha. Dog's tea, I suppose that even you would not have thought that your daddy would have a legendary item as such, right? Then bloody burn it even more miserably than you can ever imagine or handle. Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy. There was already some space in the area above his right palm. So, his palm changed direction and continued burning. At this moment, within the depths of the Kunlun God Mountain, the weapon spirit was lying there deep in slumber. He had yet to notice what was going on with his body. But Tian Fengling, who was far away in the Kunlun God sect right now, suddenly felt his heart palpitating. He then frowned and flew through the endless time and space to land on the Kunlun God Mountain. At this point, there was no change going on inside the Kunlun God Mountain. That disciple of the Heaven and Earth sect was still being trapped there. Just what in the world is going on here? Why do I get this uneasy feeling? Tian Fengling was nagged by it in his heart. The Kunlun God Mountain was extremely huge, and Lin Fan had only just burnt a small part of it. Therefore, Tian Fengling naturally did not notice anything at all. Hee, Lin Fan was sniggering out. This fella had dared to suppress your daddy here, hadn't he? After he got out, he would definitely not let that fella have it easy. He must have the other party spitting out blood before he was finally appeased. And with that, Lin Fan immersed in his digging operation once more. Chapter 1051 Enraged. Chapter 1051, Enraged. How could this be? I've never experienced this feeling in the past hundreds of years. My mental state has already long been purified, without any fear or cowardice. How could something as terrifying as such happen right now? In the depths of the Kunlun God sect, Tian Fengling's mental state was going crazy. This was a situation that had never happened in a long time now, especially not since he had cultivated himself to such a state. By right, he should be void of all weak emotions of the outside world at this point. Even when faced with the most dangerous possible scenarios, he would still be able to maintain his composure. And yet, Tian Fengling was feeling extremely unsettled. He couldn't even calm his heart down any longer. Tian Fengling swept his robes, sending forth countless stars to line the skies. He then deployed an unparalleled mystic skill and started calculating his fate, trying to determine just where this uneasy feeling of his was coming from. As for Lin Fan right now, he did not dare to act overly brazen. The core of this Kunlun God Mountain lay in its middle. If he were to alert the weapon spirit of the Kunlun God Mountain, Tian Fengling would most probably be the first to come killing over and take his little life along with it. Steady, he had to hold firm and steady. The flames of pills through thought incinerated everything around it. As though he was just following through a tunnel, Lin Fan was heading forward slowly as well. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. Lin Fan was keeping an extremely low profile right now as he slowly leveled the ground around him. No acting tough, no getting brazen or whatnot. The main reason for that was because Tian Fengling was way too domineering. After a long time, Lin Fan finally exited from the Kunlun God Mountain. Standing outside, he sucked in a deep breath of air. The air outside seemed simply way too fresh. But when he caught sight of the scenery before him, he was totally stumped. In Lin Fan's memory, this entire place should have been empty and spacious. But, why was there a mountain range before him? Shocking. This was simply way too shocking. At the same time, Lin Fan felt that this range was just comprised of normal mountains. There was nothing different about them at all. Even though this Kunlun God Mountain was a supreme-grade immortal weapon, it was Tianling Feng's initial true body that was cultivated into this immortal weapon. Using his laws to cultivate it day and night, the mystical effects it possessed had gone way beyond that of a normal supreme-grade immortal weapon right now. Perhaps, it might not be impossible for this to break through beyond the supreme-grade immortal weapon state. Lin Fan pondered for a moment. If he were to just leave right away, that might probably be the safer option. However, what sort of a person was he? One should not leave their grudges overnight. This Tian Fengling had dared to suppress him as such. If he didn't teach this guy a lesson or two, he might probably think that yours truly was a pushover, wouldn't he? Thinking that, the heaven and earth smelt was summoned, which floated out in the world instantly. Larger, larger. The heaven and earth smelt, which was initially only the size of Lin Fan's palm, started enlarging endlessly, just like a blanket. At this moment, the entire skies were being covered up by it. In Lin Fan's eyes, the heaven and earth smelt was the most formidable existence ever. As long as it was a material thing, one could stuff it right into the heaven and earth smelt and refine the bollocks out of it. Lin Fan swept his robes and had the heaven and earth smelt descend from the sky, collecting the entire range of mountains within it. Boom! The earth suddenly started quaking. The weapon spirit of the Kunlun God Mountain, which was deep in slumber, was momentarily jerked awake by the shock. What's going on? What just happened? He knew that he was supposed to keep someone imprisoned for 100 years. Therefore, it felt bored and entered into an endlessly deep sleep. But all of a sudden, a reverberating boom shocked it into awakening. Smelt, come back, time to leave. Without hesitating, Lin Fan kept back the heaven and earth smelt. In fact, he hadn't even begun to smelt the Kunlun God Mountain within it yet as he slipped off and disappeared. There was a lake in front of him. Leaping down, Lin Fan retracted his aura and entered stealth mode before hiding inside without daring to budge even a single inch. At this moment, an enraged roar boomed through the entire Kunlun God sect. Kunlun God Mountain, my Kunlun God Mountain, Tian Fengling roared out in anger. What's going on? Tai Qianshan asked perplexedly. The commotion caused by Tian Fengling had attracted the other vice grand masters as well. I've lost connection with my Kunlun God Mountain. That disciple has escaped from beneath my Kunlun God Mountain. I've got to head over to check it out right now. Without waiting any further, Tian Fengling ripped through the void and headed over in that direction. Tai Qianshan exchanged glances with the other few vice grand masters and followed close behind. This was something that did not seem possible to them at all. The Kunlun God Mountain was the true body of Tian Fengling. Tian Fengling was initially a living spirit given birth by the Kunlun God Mountain. After he became an immortal, he cultivated the Kunlun God Mountain into an immortal weapon of his own life. But now that he was claiming that his connection with the Kunlun God Mountain was severed, that was something absolutely inconceivable in their minds. The Kunlun God Mountain was impossibly large and incomparably heavy, spanning over hundreds of thousands of miles. It was also the toughest immortal weapon to snatch over in the entire endless mainland. If someone wanted to refine the Kunlun God Mountain, there was no way Tian Fengling could have no idea about it. How could his connection with the Kunlun God Mountain be severed within a moment? However, they might never ever know that the Kunlun God Mountain was covered by Lin Fan's smelt and uprooted entirely. Time and space vibrated as a few figures appeared where Lin Fan had disappeared. When Tian Fengling caught sight of everything before him, he felt his heart tightening up in pain. Arg! My Kunlun God Mountain! Damn it! Damn it! Come on out! Tian Fengling roared out in rage as a berserk aura burst forth from him. That aura shook the entire world, blanketing the area in a radius of 10,000 miles. Right now, he was completely stupefied, especially after witnessing this empty place right before his eyes. His inner heart felt as though it was about to break down. This was the immortal weapon of his life. From the moment he was born, it had been following him around. But to think that it would have disappeared at this moment. That was the Kunlun God Mountain, which had a chance of breaking through beyond the supreme great immortal weapon state. Lin Fan of the Heaven and Earth sect. Tian Fengling reared his head and bellowed. Both his eyes were baleful right now. Tai Qianshan observed everything around him. There's some activity in the void up ahead. The kid has run off in that direction. Chase. How could Tian Fengling remain waiting right here? He naturally chased in that direction. No matter what, he would have to retrieve the Kunlun God Mountain. The only thing was that he did not know what sort of methods that fellow was using to actually be able to break off his connection with the Kunlun God Mountain. At this moment, Lin Fan, who was hiding in the lake, felt his face tense up. Someone had already appeared in the sky above him. Lin Fan was still filled with confidence toward his concealment methods. As long as he wanted to hide, he was sure that these fellas would not be able to find him. Just where has he gone to? The ripples in the void ended right here. Tai Qianshan focused his sight and looked around, his expression filled with suspicion. Even though the Kunlun God Mountain was an immortal weapon of Tian Fengling, it bore a huge relationship with the sect. It was a treasure that was used to solidify the fortune of their sect. Now that it had disappeared, Tian Fengling was not the only one worried. They were all extremely worried as well. C. Lin Fan was just lying there with his head raised, looking at the few figures up in the void. At this point, there was no way he could run anymore. It was time to see who could outlast the other then. At the same time, the Kunlun God Mountain was struggling furiously within the heaven and earth smelt. However, there was no FCK use of it at all. Refine. Since there was nothing for him to do right now, Lin Fan might as well start refining the Kunlun God Mountain. Who knew, it might even bring forth some surprise for him. At this moment, the power of refinement shrouded the entire heaven and earth smelt. Even though the Kunlun God Mountain was an immortal weapon, at a time like this, it could only bear the outcome of being refined. Arg! Suddenly, a tragic cry rang out from the void above. Tian Fengling was starting to break down. Chapter 1052 Heavenly Lord Dao Comprehension. Chapter 1052, Heavenly Lord Dao Comprehension. When Tai Qianshan and the others noticed the look on Tian Fengling's face right now, they were startled. What's wrong? Tian Fengling shrieked out with a frightfully pale face as though he had just been dealt some heavy blow. He's severing my true body. What? Everyone exclaimed out in disbelief. Impossible. The Kunlun God Mountain is a supreme great immortal weapon. It has even gone through the ablution of the Kunlun God sect's fortune. Even if we wanted to refine the Kunlun God Mountain, it wouldn't be an easy task. Lin Fan, who was in the midst of secretly refining the Kunlun God Mountain, raised his head and peered through the water surface. When he caught sight of how pained the expression on Tian Fengling's face was, his heart skipped with joy. Hee. Since you wanted to suppress yours truly shall refine the Kunlun God Mountain today so that you can go bankrupt. The connection between the Kunlun God Mountain and Tian Fengling was still existent. Not only that, this Kunlun God Mountain was his true body. If it were to be refined, he would definitely have to take a huge amount of damage. Degenerate, you degenerate, I must find him, Tian Fengling howled out madly. He had never once felt an anger of this level. He could no longer endure everything that had happened today. Refine, Lin Fan yelled out in his heart. The weapon spirit of the Kunlun God Mountain within the heaven and earth smelt was wailing out right now as well. Under this power of refinement, there was no chance of it fighting back at all. No matter how great its true body was, it was all rendered useless within this heaven and earth smelt. Arg! The tragic cries were relentless and rang out through the entire heaven and earth. Right now, Tian Fengling's heart was traumatized and his face was pale as a sheet, looking as terrible as it could. At the same time, there was a mouthful of fresh blood that sprayed out while his body convulsed endlessly as though he could collapse at any moment. Tian Qianshan hurried up ahead to help support him, then took out an immortal pill and had him swallow it. The former's face was frighteningly scary at this moment as well. When one consumed an immortal pill, it could change the fate of one's life. But at this moment, no matter what immortal pills Tian Fengling consumed, it was all useless. He spat out yet another mouthful of fresh blood as his spirit withered. Even at this point, Tian Fengling could not figure out just how the other fella did it at all. This was not something as simple as severing his connection with the Kunlun God Mountain. This was just completely destroying the connection altogether. For most powerful beings, even if they were to refine immortal weapons, they would not be able to achieve a connection as intense as that of Tian Fengling and the Kunlun God Mountain. If one fell, the other fell as well. There was no avoiding it. Damn it, God damn it, Tian Fengling howled out and clenched his teeth. Eventually, he severed the connection he had with the Kunlun God Mountain entirely. Right now, he was already severely injured. If this were to continue on, being injured might be the least of his worries. Ding! Congratulations on refining success. Ding! Obtained Kunlun God Mountain's power of source. Ding! Obtained Kunlun God Mountain's power of fortune. Lin Fan discovered 2 balls of light floating within the heaven and earth smelt. However, he was busy trying to keep his life right now. Therefore, he did not have the time to analyze these 2 items properly. You've severed your own connection with the Kunlun God Mountain. Tai Qianshan exclaimed out in shock. To think that this disciple of the Heaven and Earth sect would have the capabilities to refine the Kunlun God Mountain without them being able to detect it at all. He had even forced Tian Fengling to manually sever his connection with the God Mountain. For the Kunlun God sect, this was a tremendous loss. Tian Fengling was immensely weak right now as his essence, spirit, and vitality were dissipating out of his body. If not for the immortal pill that was curbing the injury, he might have already fainted over. This was no simple injury this time around, it was an injury of his very essence spirit. Even his true body had been destroyed by someone else. This was probably a loss he could not withstand at all. If I didn't sever the connection, the outcome would have been even worse. Tian Fengling said, I'm not done with the Heaven and Earth sect for this matter just yet. But right now, I've got to head back and retreat into seclusion. Otherwise, my cultivation state is going to be unstable, and might very well drop to a point where I can never progress any further in the future. Tai Qianshan was completely taken aback. Tian Fengling was a vice Grand Master of the Kunlun God sect. If anything were to happen to him, it would be a tremendous loss for the sect as well. When Lin Fan, who had been hiding there the entire time, saw how the few figures up in the void had disappeared, he heaved out a sigh of relief momentarily. As long as they were gone, it was all good. But, given the situation right now, it'd be best for him to wait and observe for a bit more. God knew if these fellas would have more tricks hiding up their sleeves or something. A few days later, only after confirming his safety did Lin Fan dare to move slowly. Following that, he swam freely through the lake like a fish before climbing up the shore sneakily and walking on. He did not even dare to fly at this moment. Truly a bunch of trashes. Even though their strength is so incredible, they couldn't even seek me out. And he even dares to call himself the Grand Master of the Kunlun God sect. Hue. Lin Fan was extremely delighted right now. However, he still felt some lingering fears in his heart. If not for the flames of pills through thought, it might have truly been difficult for him to want to break through this Kunlun God mountain. Somewhere secretive, Lin Fan took out those 2 balls of powers. Source of Kunlun God Mountain, Connate Heavenly God Mountain, Master of the Earth Spirit. If one were to consume it, they would be able to bring any earth-related mystic skills to the full cultivation state. Kunlun God Mountain's power of fortune can be consumed to get blessed with the fortune of the Kunlun God sect and have a heaven-defying fortune. Can be converted to an astronomical amount of experience points. To think that these 2 things would have such an effect. This was truly pretty decent. Without hesitating much, Lin Fan then consumed them both. Ding! Congratulations on consuming Source of Kunlun God Mountain. Earth-based mystic skill attained full cultivation state. Connate element of Earth upgraded. Ding! Congratulations on consuming Kunlun God Mountain's power of fortune. Converting into experience points. Ding! Experience points plus. Ding! Cultivation state leveled up. Cultivation state. Golden Immortal full cultivation state. Right now, Lin Fan was way too exhilarated in his heart. The rate at which his cultivation state was rising it was way too fast. Now that he had already reached the Golden Immortal full cultivation state, wanting to turn into an Ancestor Immortal would most likely be nothing difficult anymore. In order to soothe that damaged mental state of his, Lin Fan had decided to rest here for an entire night. After all, everything that had happened today was way too dangerous. If not for the fact that he was quick-witted, he might truly have been dug right into a pit by that fella there. Coming out of the sect, Lin Fan's main motive was to meet powerful beings and have them killed so that he could gain a tremendous amount of experience points. The places he had obtained information about from the sect were all places that powerful beings would frequent. It was only there that Lin Fan could meet even more outrageous existences. At the very moment Lin Fan went into rest, something was going on in a far and distant section of space-time. An elderly man was holding onto a sparkling immortal brush and was writing something on a banner that exuded a godly aura. If some of the older powerful beings were to catch sight of this elderly man, they would definitely be astounded. This elderly man was the descendant of the Heavenly Lord Tao Comprehension. Heavenly Lord Tao Comprehension might be the weakest existence amongst the Heavenly Lords, but there was nothing within this entire universe that could escape his sight. The true immortal substitute role. The golden immortal role. The ancestor immortal role. These were all created by the hands of the Heavenly Lord Tao Comprehension. After the Heavenly Lord Tao Comprehension had fallen, he infused the wisdom of the laws that he had comprehended into a brush so that it could be passed down, and have his descendants continue writing about everything that happened in the world. The cultivation state of this elderly man was profound and imperceptible. When he looked at the contents that were written out on the banner, he was completely startled. Heaven and Earth Sect Grand Master Candidate Disciple Lin Fan suppressed the Kunlun God Sect Vice Grand Master, Tian Fengling's life immortal weapon, Kunlun God Mountain. Chapter 1053 Stabbed to Death. Chapter 1053, Stabbed to Death. The banner let out a godly glow before fluttering up into the skies and fusing with the heaven and earth. The elderly man raised his finger slightly, golden immortal state. By right, he should be up on the roll. In front of the elderly man, a ranking roll floated out before him. He gave the immortal brush in his hands a gentle swipe and wiped away the number 1 on the list before writing and replacing Lin Fan's name on it. Number 1. Lin Fan. But suddenly, the brows of the elderly man furrowed. Just as he had written the name on the roll, it slowly disappeared as though it had not existed at all in the first place. Strange. Naturally, how could the elderly man know about the existence of Lin Fan's system? With his aura retracted and his fates hidden, even if one was the descendant of a heavenly lord, or if it were the immortal brush formed from the laws of a heavenly lord, they would not be able to write down Lin Fan's name. Right now, the upper echelons of the Heaven and Earth sect were in a state of uproar. Han Juntian had checked it over quite a few times, evidently unable to believe it. He then looked over at the other Vice Grand Masters. That lad has FCKED over Tian Fengeling's Kunlun God Mountain. Can you guys believe it? Han Juntian asked with incredulity. No matter whether they believed it or not, he was finding it hard to swallow this piece of news. As the Vice Grand Master of the Kunlun God sect, Tian Fengeling's strength was extraordinary. This was especially the case for that Kunlun God Mountain of his, which was not to be underestimated at all. To think that it would be FCKED over by a disciple of their sect. When Han Juntian had connected his consciousness to the heaven and earth and found out about this piece of news, he was both taken aback and infuriated. He had not expected that Kunlun God sect would have truly made their move. However, the outcome was one that had everyone completely shocked. If not for this heaven and earth role, they might not have dared to believe it themselves. The surrounding Vice Grand Masters were stupefied as well. However, they were laughing out in their hearts. This was a piece of good news indeed in their opinion. Han Juntian pointed out with his finger and caused the void to explode out. A trace of his essence spirit permeated through time and space and arrived above the Kunlun God sect in the blink of an eye. Brother Tai, I've already known about this affair, and would like to especially extend my apologies. This is an immortal pill here. Please give it to Brother Fengeling. Regarding affairs of the younger generation, it'd be best for us from the older generation to not interfere. Otherwise, it wouldn't be too good if we were to bully the weakest stronger ones. After all, Brother Fengeling is a Vice Grand Master at the end of the day. Han Juntian flicked out his finger, causing a glowing immortal pill to land in the depths of the Kunlun God sect. Grabbing the immortal pill in his hands, Tai Qianshan's anger burst up into the heavens. The pill spirit within the immortal pill wailed out before being crushed into dust instantly, turning into a rich spirit chi that floated out into the depths of the void. That accursed Han Juntian, Tai Qianshan's heart was filled with wrath. This issue had had a huge impact on the Kunlun God sect. Now that even Han Juntian knew about this, Tai Qianshan would have to reconsider a little about wanting to kill Lin Fan. It was basically impossible for him to want to take action personally anymore. Han Juntian must be keeping watch over the activities of the Kunlun God sect right now. As long as he were to take action, the former would follow closely behind. Now was not the time for them to fall out completely with the Heaven and Earth sect just yet. If the old masters could successfully become heavenly lords, the first one they would take down would definitely be the Heaven and Earth sect. Right now, Tian Fengeling was in the depths of the Kunlun God sect, healing up his body with the use of the Kunlun God sect's healing immortal weapons. However, he would most likely not be able to recover without a good 100 years. This was truly a huge blow for the Kunlun God sect. The amount of pills that the healing immortal weapons required were an ocean's worth as well. In every single aspect, they had really taken tremendous losses for a Heaven and Earth sect disciple this time around. At this moment, Lin Fan had already left the place he was at before. Right now, he was headed for a dangerous secret ground that was slightly famous in the Endless Mainland. Rumors had it that it was a secret ground formed after the fall of an old monster. As for these old monsters and whatnot, Lin Fan was totally averse to them, and had a great amount of contempt toward them. The main reason was because he had been disgusted by now thanks to the 7 Saint old dog. As for pills, immortal weapons, and whatnot, Lin Fan was not too interested in them either. It was enough for him to just have people to kill. A secret ground of this sort would naturally have many powerful beings coming for it. As long as Lin Fan were to maintain a low profile, there would basically be nothing to worry about. Diving into the void, Lin Fan traveled tens of thousands of miles in the blink of an eye. This time around, he could have considered having laid down a grudge with the Kunlun God sect. If he were to meet any Kunlun God sect disciples in the future, he would naturally have to strike first. Since the bridge was already burnt, there was no need to have further considerations anymore. After a long time, a city ahead of Lin Fan caught his attention. Based on the knowledge he had obtained from the sect, this was a city filled with martial artists entirely. After they had obtained items from the secret ground, they would conduct their trades here. After entering the city, Lin Fan's heart skipped a beat. This was truly a spectacular place. True immortal state, mystic immortal state, and golden immortal state beings were plenty. Walking along the streets, martial artists surrounding him would be yelling out and hawking their goods. At this moment, there was a commotion somewhere ahead. Long Jinfei, you went back on your words. We agreed on entering the secret ground together where I would help you guys defend against those puppets while you guys grab the treasures. To think that you would be giving me this trash right now. A man scolded out harshly as his eyes shone with an endless amount of rage. However, it was as though he was wary of the other party's strength and did not dare to take action at all. This piqued Lin Fan's curiosity as he took a quick look. But in the next instant, his eyes shone brightly. In front of a group of people stood a man whose waist had a token hanging on it, representing his identity as a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect. The few people behind the Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect, Long Jinfei, spoke up, "Who are you? We don't even know you. You're only a mere golden immortal upper-level being. What rights do you have to enter the secret ground with us? Do you know that he's a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect?" A man said. Long Jinfei stood there haughtily, evidently unbothered by this man before him in the least bit. The hearts of some of the surrounding martial artists tensed up. They were naturally fearful of this man's status as a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect. The Kunlun God sect was a major sect, not something they could go against at all. HMPH, I can only blame myself for being blind at that time to have believed in you guys. To think that this would be all a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect amounts to. That man scoffed out in a huff and prepared to leave. He would just take it that he was scammed this time around. Furthermore, the strength of the other party was way higher than his. Even if he wanted to clash head-on, he would not be a match for the other party. Halt there. At this moment, Long Jinfei spoke up, casting his sight toward this man. You said that this was all a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect amounts to. Since that's the case, we'll see just how much this amounts to then. Suddenly, Long Jinfei triggered his killing intent. The man exclaimed out in shock, Long Jinfei, don't go overboard now. Don't think that you can behave as such just because you are a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect. From this day forth, who would still dare to cooperate with you to enter any secret ground? Long Jinfei laughed out coldly, that is something you don't have to worry about. But just at that moment, a bright flash of light burst forth. Long Jinfei's face changed as he turned his eyes around. But by the time he had even reacted to it, there was a hand placed on his shoulder already. Brother, are you a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect? Suddenly, Lin Fan had appeared before Long Jinfei in the blink of an eye, asking him while smiling. So fast. Long Jinfei's heart was skipping as he let out a bright smile, yes. And you are? Lin Fan's smile turned even brighter as he revealed 2 rows of pearly whites. Ugh. With lightning speed, a dagger had appeared in Lin Fan's hands since God knows when, which he then stabbed right into Long Jinfei's tummy. Once, twice, thrice, Long Jinfei's eyes were wide open as though he could not believe what was happening. After Lin Fan was done with his stabbing, Lin Fan patted on the latter's shoulder. Instantly, Bear Nudenus was deployed as he reaped in every single thing from Long Jinfei's head to toe. A naked corpse was then presented before the eyes of the masses. Without even turning his head to look back, Lin Fan continued walking in the direction ahead. At this moment, the entire place was silent. It was as though everyone were frozen in stupefaction. Chapter 1054 Scared Silly. Chapter 1054, Scared Silly. This completely nude body simply stood on its spot, the few wounds on his body being extremely horrifying to watch as fresh blood oozed out constantly. The formidable sword will was surging through Long Jinfei's body and destroying every bit of life within it. This was especially the case for that little bird at his groin which was just swaying along with the wind right now. There was a final trace of consciousness left in Long Jinfei by now. His mind was entirely blank save for this thought, he had just been stabbed to death by someone. Thud, in less than 1,000th of a second, Long Jinfei collapsed onto the ground as his eyes gradually lost the life in them. All the surrounding martial artists were completely shocked. Ah, dead, he's dead, he is a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect. To think that he would be stabbed to death. This is going to be a big issue here. When the people who were accompanying Long Jinfei caught sight of this scene, they stood rooted where they were in a daze. The man who had gotten into a conflict with Long Jinfei was startled as well, making a run for it immediately. Something big has just happened. He couldn't linger here any further or he was going to get implicated in it. This was especially the case given that Long Jinfei was a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect. Not only had he just been stabbed to death, he was even lying there stark naked. This was just a wholesome embarrassment for the Kunlun God sect. If the Kunlun God sect were to catch wind of this, they would definitely go crazy. Ding. Congratulations on killing Ancestor Immortal lower level powerful being. Ding. Experience points plus. Ding. Obtained storage ring. Ding. Congratulations on obtaining lower grade immortal weapon, Heavenly Fire God Spear. The rewards were pretty decent. To think that there would even be a lower grade immortal weapon to be found here. Although, these things did not have much use in Lin Fan's case. Opening the storage ring to peek inside, he found the sight to be truly pretty decent. There were quite a number of pills, and even lower grade immortal pills were aplenty. Lin Fan continued walking forward carefreely. When the surrounding martial artists caught sight of him, all of them dispersed in fear. Savage. This was a savage man. Lin Fan peered left and right, feeling immensely joyous in his heart. Honestly, the fortune of his life was simply way too good at times. To think that he could bump into a disciple of the Kunlun God sect in some random city. If this were in the past, he would definitely not have taken that guy's life. But right now, hell, everyone from the top to the bottom of the Kunlun God sect were already trying to do him. So, why should he get all friendly with them? Yours truly was not afraid of neither the heavens nor the earth. If he met them, he'd just FCK them over. Why should he bother what status they had back in the Kunlun God sect? Taking out a bunch of pills from Long Jinfei's storage rings, Lin Fan stuffed them all into his mouth and chomped down on them. Yummy and fragrant, there were quite a number of these pills. Seemed like Long Jinfei must have gotten some pretty decent returns from the secret ground. Ding. Congratulations on consuming lower grade immortal pill. Ding. Congratulations on consuming lower grade immortal pill. ... The experience points skyrocketed up furiously. However, it was naturally not as fast when compared to stabbing powerful folks. The Grandmaster candidates of the Kunlun God sect were simply way too good as kills. Not only that, all of them were especially wealthy. Lin Fan could not agree more that this was yet another way of getting rich. He was actually hoping that every sect would sow some seeds of grudge with him so that he could start killing them wantonly. If he could kill all them together in a wave, it would definitely be amazing. His mouth was still filled with the lingering fragrance. The taste of immortal pills was simply extraordinary. At this moment, there was a stall that was selling items to eat. Lin Fan stepped up, wanting to inquire about the price. But, when the boss caught sight of Lin Fan and then the corpse that lay far up behind him, he sprinted off as fast and as far as he could, leaving his stall behind. He could not care about it anymore. Everyone nearby knew that this man was a lunatic. To think that he would even dare kill a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect. This guy was just playing with his life. Boring. Lin Fan felt that it was probably about time for him to leave this place. God knows if those people back at the Kunlun God sect would know of what was happening here at this place. What should he do if they did know and came rushing over? But just at this moment, Lin Fan stopped in his tracks and turned his head around. What are you guys following me for? The bunch of people who had been with Long Jinfei were following behind Lin Fan furtively. It was as though they wanted to know where Lin Fan was headed for so that they could tell on him. November LBJNN. Those people were stunned as they let out a horrified look on their faces, and no. We're not following you. At this moment, Lin Fan took out the Heavenly Fire God Spear. A ball of flames burst forth at the tip, causing the entire void to distort. When the bunch of people caught sight of this, their entire face turned frightfully pale as they screamed out in fear, "Don't kill us. Please don't kill us." In the blink of an eye, those fellas scrammed off as fast as they could without leaving even a single trace. Lin Fan chuckled out before continuing to walk up front. After he took his leave, a few figures walked over from the distance. Their leader was a woman wearing a black shawl on her face. Even though her features could not be seen completely, from the general outline of hers, this seemed like a beautiful chick. However, the aura she was emanating was quite frosty, as though she was a witch from the 9 spirit hells. "Go and check out what's going on," the woman spoke up and commanded. Yes. A burly man who was following behind her nodded his head and headed up before rushing back hurriedly. "Madam. The Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect, Long Jinfei, is up ahead. However, he has been killed by someone and is just lying there naked." The moment the woman heard this, her face changed slightly. Everyone following behind her gave off the same expression. Long Jinfei was a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect, with a cultivation of Ancestor Immortal lower level. He could be considered as a talented genius. But now that he was killed by someone, this was a shock for all of them. When the surrounding martial artists caught sight of this woman, they made way as well. It wasn't because they were afraid of this woman, they were afraid of the token at her waist. That purple token which gave off a sinister and cold aura had only 4 words written on them. Suppressing Demons Heaven Faction. They were from the Suppressing Demons Heaven Faction, which was one of the 6 major factions, and belonged to a demonic sect. Their style of doing things was extremely sinister, as they were quick and decisive in killing. Therefore, most people would not dare to mess with them. At this moment, the people who were trailing Lin Fan were running away frantically. When the woman caught sight of those people, she ordered, "Capture them over and ask them what is happening." Yes. The burly man nodded his head and spread out his fingers. Instantly, those few figures were sucked over as though their bodies were no longer under their control. This was an extremely tyrannical palm move that could suck over a few golden immortal powerful beings just like that. One could imagine just how horrifying this level of strength was. "Don't kill us. We're not following you. We're really not," the few people shouted out in fear. "I know these few people. Golden Immortal Kai Jiao and Golden Immortal TNC. To think that they would be frightened to such a state." When the burly man caught sight of these people, his eyes shone with disdain. "Speak, how did Long Jinfei die?" the burly man asked. "Someone killed Long Jinfei," Golden Immortal TNC replied with a frightfully pale face. "How did he kill Long Jinfei?" the burly man asked once more. "It's like this." That man patted on Long Jinfei's shoulder and he suddenly had a dagger which he used to stab into Long Jinfei's tummy. Just like that, once, twice, and thrice. He then gave another pat and poof, all of Long Jinfei's clothes were gone. That man is simply way too horrifying. He knew that Long Jinfei was a Grand Master candidate of the Kunlun God sect, and even then dared to kill him. He must be a lunatic. Golden Immortal Kai Jiao exclaimed out in horror. Out of the 9 sects, there wasn't a single one that was to be trifled with. The other party had clearly known of Long Jinfei's identity, and yet he chose to strike out. He had complete disregard of his own life. Interesting. The deep eyes of the woman shone with a surprised expression. The burly men then looked at these people and hollered, "Scram!" "Why yes, madam, I think that man is definitely far from simple. Long Jinfei is an ancestor immortal lower level being. For this guy to kill him so easily, his cultivation state is definitely not weak." The burly man spoke up. "Doesn't matter, we'll just go take a look." While the voice of the woman was gentle and soft, there was a cold intent hidden underneath it. Chapter 1055 Who's Afraid of Whom? Chapter 1055 Who's Afraid of Whom? The burly man felt some hesitation in his heart. This man had killed a Grand Master candidate of the Kunlun God sect, sowing a grudge with them in the process. If they were to get too close with this guy, they might end up attracting some trouble for themselves. However, since the madam did not seem bothered by it all, he naturally did not say anything more either. The death of Long Jinfei did not cause too much of a commotion. It had only spread out in a small area centered around where he was because there was no earth-shattering battle. For him to die in 3 mere stabs as an ancestor immortal state being was something that seemed absolutely impossible and unreal. Ancestor immortal state beings could be considered as indestructible existences. Even if their bodies were smashed into smithereens, their consciousness would be able to escape. But, with those 3 stabs of Lin Fan, consciousness aside, even Long Jinfei's laws of ancestor immortal state were all totally erased from existence. This is a pretty decent place indeed. Lin Fan looked around at his surroundings and lamented. It might take some time before the death of Long Jinfei would be relayed back to the Kunlun God sect. As for now, Lin Fan wasn't afraid in the least bit. What would come would eventually come anyway. While he could still try to dodge it, there was no reason why he should have to live life so tiringly. "Please hold your steps." At this moment, a voice rang out. Lin Fan turned his head around and looked at the few people before him. His gaze was especially fixated on the token hanging at the waist of the shawled woman, which read, "Suppressing Heaven's Demon Faction." "What's up?" With a quick glance, Lin Fan could tell that the cultivation states of those few people were pretty strong. This was especially the case for the burly man standing at the back. To think that he would be an ancestor immortal state upper-level being. As for that shawled woman, her cultivation state was at the ancestor immortal lower level. The rest of them weren't really worth Lin Fan's attention, mere golden immortal ants. Heck, they weren't even full cultivation state beings. The woman spoke up while chuckling. For someone to be able to still walk around so carefreely after killing the Grand Master candidate of the Kunlun God sect, this is the first time I'm coming across something like this. Lin Fan shrugged his shoulders. "It's nothing much, I suppose. Although, what do you guys want?" "Nothing much either. Just wanna make friends, I suppose," the woman replied nonchalantly. Right now, Lin Fan had an urge to chop the other party to death. Not only were their cultivation states pretty decent, they were even people of demonic sects. Even if he were to chop them to death, it would be exacting justice for the heavens, and he wouldn't even have to feel bad in his consciousness. Who knew, he might even be thanked for it. But of course, those were just mere thoughts in his mind. Given the ancestor immortal upper-level cultivation state of that burly man, things might not be that easy. On the surface, his aura looked calm and unassuming. However, there were black lines intertwined on his body, with an extremely formidable aura cruising through as though he had cultivated some unparalleled mystic skill. Making friends is fine as long as you guys aren't afraid to die. So, may I ask for your name, beauty? Lin Fan chuckled out. The burly man was enraged immediately, insolent. Mind your tone. Oh, pretty high class, aren't we? Even though an ancestor immortal upper-level cultivation state is pretty decent, it's not exactly impossible if I want to kill you as well. Therefore, you had better mind your tone. Lin Fan glanced over at the burly man, unaffected by him in the least bit. Even though if they were to talk about strength, he truly might not be able to kill the other party, this big rockhead seemed a little dumb. Shut up, the woman scolded out. The burly man glared at Lin Fan with an angry expression before moving to the back without saying anything anymore. Mo Qingshan, decent name, remember mine, Lin Fan. Lin Fan replied. When that name was said out, the face of the initially angry burly man changed. You are that person who had taken down the Kunlun God Mountain. Grand Master Candidate of the Heaven and Earth Sect, Lin Fan. Huh, Lin Fan was stunned. The issue of your daddy taking down the Kunlun God Mountain should not have been known by too many people, right? Could Tian Fengling be the one who had publicized the news himself? But, how magnanimous of a heart must he have to spread it to the world after being FCKED over by someone? This guy was amazing. Lin Fan could not help but feel impressed toward him. Mo Qingshan chuckled out with a jingle, to think that a Grand Master Candidate of the Heaven and Earth Sect would have such guts to FCK over the Kunlun God Mountain of the Vice Grand Master from the Kunlun God Sect, Tian Fengling. Not only that, you still dare to use your real name out in the open. This maiden is impressed with you. Lin Fan wasn't bothered at all. If one has got the skills, what need is there to hide oneself? If I wanted to hide from the very beginning, I wouldn't have done what I did. Mo Qingshan was slightly taken aback before laughing out. Speak then, just what do you guys want? There are only two types of people I know in the world outside. The first are strangers, and the second are foes. Lin Fan said. Interesting. For us stepping forth this time around, the first reason is that we wanted to see for ourselves just what sort of a character would have the guts to kill a Grand Master Candidate of the Kunlun God Sect. The second reason is that I would like to cooperate with you. Mo Qingshan replied. Lin Fan loved cooperating with others. However, in collaborations as such, there would usually be nothing good that coming out. Eventually, both sides would definitely come at the other's throats. Cooperation, I love it. Just what is this all about? If there's any good to be gained out of it, I don't think I would really mind. Lin Fan asked. I'm afraid that this is an inconvenient place to carry on with this conversation. How about we follow up with this chat in a shop? Mo Qingshan suggested. NOVEL-B in .c ohm. Alright, ... Within a shop, you're referring to a treasure ground where you want me to go with you guys as a companion. Lin Fan was startled, to think that something this good would exist. Naturally, this is a treasure ground which only Qin Shengjian of the God Essence sect knows about. Well, other than him, I do know a little about it as well. But compared to Qin Shengjian, there really is a world of a difference. Mo Qingshan said. Hue. Lin Fan chuckled out as he started scheming in his heart. There must be some catch to this for sure. If there was really some great treasure awaiting, would they want to share it with him just like this? Sure, no problem, we can cooperate on this. Lin Fan agreed immediately without having to think twice. No matter what sort of tricks these guys were plotting, it was of no use against him. As long as he were to arrive at the destination, he would act solo. Mo Qingshan was stunned before chuckling out, alright. Since that's the case, we've got a deal then. It was ultimately decided that they would move out the next day. Madam, Qin Shengjian has headed over to the Kunlun God Sect to borrow their God Fire and refine his mystic skill, and has permitted 3 slots for the Kunlun God Sect's side. Things might get a little tricky then. This is especially the case with this fellow we just met. A single look and one can tell that he's no kind soul. Why do we have to keep such an unpredictable element around us? Even if you respect his strength, madam, is there a need to keep someone as dangerous as him by our side? Mo Qingshan smiled. However, that smile bore with it a frosty undertone, respect. Initially, I had only wanted to see for myself just what sort of capabilities this person had. But, now that I've confirmed that he is a disciple of the Heaven and Earth sect, I've got yet another plan bubbling in my mind. If this can work out, things might just have a really different outcome. Looking at how contemplative Mo Qingshan was, the burly man then broke out into a smile as though he had finally understood the connection between everything she had done. On another side of the city, Lin Fan was sitting cross-legged. Right now, his cultivation state was at the golden immortal full cultivation state, just that step away from reaching the ancestor immortal state. If he could raise his level up, he would be able to kill any gods or Buddhas that would come in his path. As for those big sects, anyone below the position of a vice grand master would be killed by Lin Fan in a single punch. And this time around, Lin Fan had seized the opportunity. Be it the Kunlun God sect or the suppressing demons Heaven faction, he would have to slaughter all of them without letting anyone off. The astronomical experience points were what Lin Fan truly required. Wanting to take him to the treasure ground. Didn't they just want to scam him to death? If they want to do so, come on then. Who's afraid of whom? Chapter 1056 Stabbing Maniac. Chapter 1056, Stabbing Maniac. A few days later, Lin Fan had set out with Mo Qingshan for a couple of days now, and the news of Long Jinfei's death had spread over to the Kunlun God sect as well by now. The sect was incensed from head to toe, hell-bent on sniffing out the killer. But, they did not even know who was the one who had committed the crime, making them even more infuriated. The only ones present were Golden Immortal TNC and Golden Immortal Kai Jiao. If they wanted to know who had killed Long Jinfei, it would only be possible to get the information from their mouths. But, even they did not know who the other party was. The only thing they could do was draw out an image of his. When the disciples of the Kunlun God sect first saw the drawing, they could not make out who it was at first. But, one of the remnants who had headed over to the Heaven and Earth sect the previous time suddenly yelped out when he saw the drawing. Wasn't that the Mother Sea King dog, Lin Fan? Tai Qianshan was thoroughly enraged and declared immediately that no matter who it was, as long as they could kill Lin Fan, they would be gifted with an upper-grade immortal weapon. At the same time, they would be able to go cultivate in the deep areas of the sect. A reward of that level was something that blew the minds of the disciples of the Kunlun God sect. Even some of the elders were tempted over it. An upper-grade immortal weapon was absolutely extraordinary. If it were to be deployed, it could raise one's strength by a huge margin. And, if they could head to the deep areas of the sect for cultivation, that would be something even more incredible. When the Heaven and Earth sect caught wind of this issue, Han Juntian was totally stupefied. Couldn't this lad just not bloody cause any trouble? Eventually, he had to instruct his disciples to not head out too much for a while. As for those Grand Master candidate disciples that were outside, he was naturally not too concerned over their safety. After all of them had an extraordinary strength, and many ways to protect their own lives. As for Han Juntian, he was just entirely focused on every single move and action that the Kunlun God sect was going to make. If Tai Qianshan or any other Vice Grand Masters were to make a move, he would definitely step in to stop them. But, at the end of the day, Han Juntian too was feeling too amazing over the way things were moving right now. A few days later, in the endless void, a man dressed in yellow robes stood there, carrying an almighty aura. His face was calm, yet he emanated a chilling aura from head to toe. Looking at the few people before him, he started speaking up slowly. Are these the people that the Kunlun God sect has selected? One of the elders of the Kunlun God sect nodded his head. That's right. You had borrowed the god fire of the Kunlun God sect to refine your mystic skills, so these are the 3 people we are sending in for the treasure ground exploration this time around. Our sect hopes that you can keep your word. That's of course. I, Qin Shungjin, am a man of my words. In the treasure ground, the sort of encounters they face will depend on their affinity. I will not take their lives. But, if they dare to resort to any form of trickeries, then don't blame me, Qin Shungjin, for being ruthless. Qin Shungjin said coldly. The 3 people recommended by the Kunlun God sect were all Grand Master candidates. But when they looked at Qin Shungjin, even they could feel their hearts sinking. So strong, the 3 of them did not have a weak cultivation state, and were powerful beings who reigned over a part of the endless mainland as well. But, in the face of Qin Shungjin, they could feel as though the powers in their bodies were freezing up, unable to flow properly. I've already instructed them before coming here. Once they enter the treasure ground, they will separate from you and not disturb you. This time around, their main priority of entering the treasure ground was not to hunt some precious treasure of anything within it. The strength of this Qin Shungjin was supernatural, and he was incomparably familiar with this treasure ground. He would definitely not leave anything behind. Therefore, the main motive of the Kunlun God sect's Grand Master was for these 3 disciples to go survey the place properly and see if they could make out who the person who had left this treasure ground behind was, or perhaps if there were any loopholes in that place. Of course, if they could have the affinity to meet any form of treasure encounter or whatnot, that would be for the best as well. These 3 disciples were pretty famous outside. Ancestor Immortal Zhu Li, Jin Zhuli. Golden Immortal Kun Dong, Zheng Changken. Fairy Bai Lu, Yu Shower. Even though they were renowned in the outside world, in front of Qin Shungjin, they did not dare to even breathe heavily. That would be the best. Qin Shungjin nodded his head before flicking his robes aside and bringing the 3 of them into the void. There was still quite some distance between this place and the treasure ground after all. Lin Fan followed Mo Qingshan and the others in the void. He did not know just where this treasure ground was, but in the past few days, they must have had already traveled an extremely large distance. It's just right up ahead. Mo Qingshan finally spoke up just as Lin Fan was wondering. Lin Fan glanced over, finding it to be an extremely normal place. However, there seemed to be something wrong with the dimension. If not for the fact that he was already at this cultivation state, even if he passed by this place, he would not have discovered that there were some signs of overlap of the void in this dimension. This place seems pretty plain. How could it be some huge treasure ground? Lin Fan asked. Even though this place looks normal on the surface, one would require a key to enter the treasure ground. And just so, I happen to have a key with me here. While it's just a small part of it, it can still open up the doors of the treasure ground and let us in. Mo Qingshan replied. At this moment, Mo Qingshan took out a crystal shard that was only the size of her fingernails. There was nothing special about this crystal shard, yet there was a mysterious aura emanating from it. This was an aura that Lin Fan had never experienced before. This is a key item to be used for entering this treasure ground. Without this, no matter how strong you are, one will never be able to enter the treasure ground. Mo Qingshan continued. Rumors have it that this is an endless space, the largest treasure ground out there, with an infinite number of treasures. Even though there is no one who has entered here before, there would be no smoke without a fire. Hence, there must be some truth to those rumors. The burly man said. The largest treasure ground. Lin Fan was a little taken aback and excited at the same time. He wondered what sort of things this treasure ground would actually contain. It's about time. I think we should head in now. Mo Qingshan spoke up. Lin Fan's heart skipped a beat, feeling that something dangerous was about to happen. Mo Qingshan did not say anything more. She channeled her powers, and with that, the little crystal shard burst with a beam of light that struck out into the dimensions of the void. With that, a tear ripped open in the void. It couldn't be considered big, and could only accommodate one person at a time. Who's going in first? Lin Fan had no issues about it. However, he knew that Mo Qingshan would definitely not be that kind-hearted. Even though he hadn't come across the Suppressing Demons Heaven faction yet, who would believe that a demonic sect would actually be so kind-hearted to inform others about discovering a treasure ground? Did they really think that people out there were fools? But, no matter whether others bought it or not, Lin Fan did not buy it. They must definitely be plotting something. I'll head in first, Mo Qingshan said before turning into a streak of light and entering. At this moment, Lin Fan looked at the burly man, and then at the 2 others behind. The burly man did the same and revealed a smile. However, those pearly whites of his seemed extremely frightening. Do you know who I am? The burly man said. No idea. Come on, share with me what your background is. Lin Fan chuckled and asked. I am the Hall Master of the Extreme Evil Hall in the Suppressing Demons Heaven faction, Hall Master Black Demon. Hall Master Black Demon said condescendingly. Lin Fan patted the shoulder of the Hall Master Black Demon. I heard that the Extreme Evil Hall of the Suppressing Demons Heaven faction is extremely horrifying. All the mystic skills that you guys cultivate are completely inhumane and terrifying. It's good that you know. Looking at how the other party was patting his shoulder, Hall Master Black Demon smiled. Yes, Lin Fan nodded his head. All of a sudden, he stabbed out toward the stomach of the Hall Master Black Demon. Pishu, that move is useless now. The Hall Master Black Demon grabbed onto Lin Fan's wrist and revealed a smile. Lin Fan blinked his eye. That seems to be the case. I think that move is definitely useless now. But, it's not like that's the only move I know. Huh, the Hall Master Black Demon was stunned as he suddenly felt his head going giddy. Out of nowhere, the palm that Lin Fan had rested on Hall Master Black Demon's shoulder suddenly grasped a brick which he used to slap out on the back of the latter's head. With that, the hand that the Hall Master Black Demon used to grip onto Lin Fan's wrist loosened up. Lin Fan then held up the body of the Hall Master Black Demon. With a twist of his wrist, he stabbed down subsequently. Even though it was useless at the start, it's useful again now. Lin Fan smiled brilliantly. Once, twice, thrice, every single stab was ever so pleasurable. Do you guys really think that I'm stupid? Even if you guys don't make a move first, I'm definitely going to make my move first. The one who strikes first gets the advantage, and the one who strikes last loses out. How can you guys call yourselves a demonic sect without even knowing that logic? Lin Fan giggled. The other two who were standing by the side looked at everything before them with fear. Their hearts were filled with an endless amount of horror, as though they had just seen a ghost. Chapter 1057 Let's Stick Together. Chapter 1057, Let's Stick Together. Run, this was the only thought they had on their minds right now. In their eyes, this man was even scarier than anyone from the demonic sects. His methods were unnatural, and left one with no chance to live at all. Don't run, let me chop you guys to death. Lin Fan yelled out as he took out his eternal axe and swung it furiously. A streak of axe flash sliced out across the heaven and earth. Ugh, as he sliced at the both of their bodies, it didn't matter even if they were golden immortal powerful beings. Nothing would work at all to stop the axe. The two of them stood tall between the heaven and earth before their upper bodies started sliding down, splashing blood all over the place as they were cleaved into two. Bam! In the next instant, they exploded out and turned into dust. Ding! Congratulations on killing Ancestor Immortal Upper Level Powerful Being. Ding! Congratulations on killing Golden Immortal Powerful Being. ... As expected, the experience points skyrocketed rapidly. Especially after killing that Ancestor Immortal Upper Level Being, Lin Fan was just that bit of experience points away from a breakthrough. But, it was alright, there were going to be a lot more opportunities awaiting him inside. Coming next to the corpse of Hall Master Black Demon, Lin Fan's god-tier technique, Bare Nudeness, was deployed instantly to strip him naked. Swinging down his axe, he then chopped off the guy's head and held in it his hands while walking toward that tear in the void. Right now, the tear in the void wasn't sealed yet. Evidently, Mo Qingshan must be holding onto it from within. Standing before the tear, Lin Fan's lips curled into a grin. This time around, things were getting bloody interesting. To think that he would be marked by the other party. There must definitely be some plot behind this. Could it be because of the Kunlun God Mountain? Thinking left and right, he found it to probably be the most valuable item he had right now, which everyone seemed to know about. Not only was the Kunlun God Mountain a supreme-grade immortal weapon, but it was also an item of Tian Fengeling's true body. If any ordinary person were to find out about it, they would definitely want to get their hands on it. However, this Mo Qingshan must be thinking of taking the middle path to slowly scam it out of Lin Fan. According to his calculations, Mo Qingshan must have definitely set up a death trap on the other end of the tier. Within the treasure ground, Mo Qingshan had set forth all the power from a single middle-grade immortal weapon. This middle-grade immortal weapon was a sword formation that possessed an unparalleled offense and defense. As long as that fellow were to enter along with Hall Master Black Demon, forcefully killing him shouldn't be an issue at all. Why are they so slow? Mo Qingshan's eyes were filled with confusion, not knowing what had happened. In theory, the other party should have entered by now. Ever since she found out that the other party had murdered a Grandmaster candidate of the Kunlun God sect, Mo Qingshan's interest was piqued. If it were an ordinary person, she would have thought of using the other party properly, but would never ever reveal the secret of the treasure ground. But, when she found out that the person who had murdered Long Jinfei was the same person who had taken down the Kunlun God Mountain, Mo Qingshan's heart skipped a beat, knowing that this was definitely no usual situation. After all, that person had the supreme great immortal weapon, the Kunlun God Mountain. The Kunlun God Mountain was an immortal weapon of the true body of Kunlun God sect's Vice Grandmaster. At the same time, it was an immortal weapon that stabilized and held the Kunlun God sect's fortune. If any ordinary person were to obtain it, wanting to soar into the heavens wouldn't be a tall task. And, if she were to get it, then her cultivation state would definitely skyrocket, and wanting to enter an even higher cultivation state wouldn't be that difficult either. Therefore, she decided to divulge the secret of the treasure ground straight away, hoping that the other party would be interested. At the same time, after revealing this big secret, she had already thought of her backup plan. If the other party did not believe in her words, she would then make her next move to convince the other party of it. But, the moment Lin Fan agreed to it without having her to resort to her backup plan, she found it to be absolutely tyrannical. Right now, Mo Qingshan was getting a little flustered. It had been such a long time now, and yet they were not here. Could there have been some issues? However, that shouldn't be right. The Hall Master Black Demon wouldn't strike at him outside. And just as Mo Qingshan was still busy worrying about it, there was some activity within the tear in the void. Mo Qingshan's heart leapt with joy. Pishu. Instantly, a ball of light bolted out of the tear in the void. Mo Qingshan was stunned as though she had yet to react to it. But, by the time she snapped to her senses, her entire face changed and turned frightfully pale as she glared at everything before her in horror. Bump, bump, the sounds of a ball rolling across the ground arose. But when the ball came to a stop, it turned to be a head. To think that it was the head of the Hall Master Black Demon. Those pair of eyes which were wide open and filled with grievances were imprinted deep into Mo Qingshan's mind. How could this be? However, before she could even react, Lin Fan appeared right before her face. What's wrong? Patting on her shoulders, he asked right away. Gulp. Mo Qingshan swallowed her saliva and looked at him in the utmost horror, as though she could not believe everything she was seeing right now. Lin Fan chuckled out and raised his hand to tear away Mo Qingshan's shawl. Say, why is a woman like you always wearing her shawl? Oh boy, pretty decent, Why are you hiding left and right when you're so beautiful? Why you? By now, Mo Qingshan was starting to stammer in her speech because of the fear. The Hall Master Black Demon was an ancestor immortal state being. How could he die just like that? Don't mind me now. That guy had been getting on my nerves for a while now, so I decided to just kill him casually before coming in. You wouldn't mind, would you? Lin Fan asked. Mo Qingshan's body froze up, not knowing how to reply. This was truly the first time she was coming across such a situation. Do you mind or not? No matter what, he is one of your men. Now that I've chopped him up, if you're feeling unhappy in your heart, do voice it out. I'm a really democratic person. Lin Fan chuckled. Mo Qingshan looked at Lin Fan, especially at that smile of his and those 2 rows of pearly whites. She could not help but feel her heart tensing up. She was only at the Ancestor Immortal lower level, while the Hall Master Black Demon was at the Ancestor Immortal upper level. If even the Hall Master Black Demon were not a match for Lin Fan, then what did she even amount to? No, right now, Mo Qingshan was feeling immensely regretful. Why would she harbor such thoughts back then? Right now, she was giving herself to him without even knowing what the other party was intending to do. Ah, it's good that you don't mind. As I was saying, people from demonic sects only care about themselves, and everyone else can just die, right? A single look at that Hall Master Black Demon was enough for me to know that he was no good guy. Therefore, I chopped him to death, and that was that. It's just that who in the world are you? Lin Fan asked out. This tone of his made it sound like both of them were good buddies. I am the daughter of the faction leader of the Suppressing Demons Heaven faction. Mo Qingshan replied. Oh, you're a missy. No wonder. I was wondering why the Hall Master Black Demon would be so respectful toward you when his cultivation state is so much higher than yours. Lin Fan remarked. Mo Qingshan did not reply. But, at this moment, her body jerked intensely. Lin Fan hugged her with a single hand as the both of them walked side by side. Come, a single look and one can tell that this treasure ground is pretty extraordinary. We've got to stick closer now. In that way, if there's any danger, we can at least look out for one another. Lin Fan chuckled. But after taking a step, he raised his head. Say, this sword formation is pretty peculiar. To think that it would be equivalent to a middle-grade immortal weapon once grouped together. What is this for? Did you meet some trouble? Mo Qingshan could not figure out what the other party wanted at all right now. But despite that, she replied while trembling, that's right. I met with some slight troubles just now. As he slapped out with his palm, the entire sword formation dispersed and turned into thumb-sized flying swords. I like this thing. As the missy of a big faction, I'm sure you wouldn't care much for something like this, right? Lin Fan swallowed the entire middle-grade immortal weapon and chewed it a few times. Crunch, munch, nom. Not much taste to it. Mo Qingshan looked at Lin Fan with an aghast expression, as though she had just seen a ghost. To think that he would devour an entire middle-grade immortal weapon in just a single mouthful. At the same time, she had lost all connection between it and her body. Chapter 1058 That's the way. Chapter 1058. That's the way. That set of middle-grade immortal weapon was composed of 9,999 immortal swords that were supreme-grade utmost treasures, and carried an unparalleled might. It was much stronger compared to most other middle-grade immortal weapons, and could even be on par with upper-grade immortal weapons. But, the current situation had Mo Qingshan entirely flabbergasted. To think that this fella would just devour the middle-grade immortal weapon right before her eyes. Horrifying. This was simply horrifying. The middle-grade immortal weapon already had a weapon spirit. But, not only was Lin Fan not destroyed by the weapon spirit after devouring it, Mo Qingshan had unimaginably lost every bit of connection she had with the middle-grade immortal weapon. Even though she was the daughter of the faction leader of the Suppressing Demons Heaven faction, being able to obtain this set of middle-grade immortal weapon had been no easy task. Amongst the immortal weapons, set-type immortal weapons were worth the most, and were more expensive than most other immortal weapons. This set of Heavenly Essence Desolate Crushing Sword formation was one of the top 20 immortal weapons in the Suppressing Demons Heaven faction, with offense and defense combined into a single body. When it attacked, the strikes were relentless as it released a crushing desolate sword chi. Even if it were a golden immortal full cultivation state being who was stuck within this sword formation, they would find themselves drained to death. Heck, even an ancestor immortal state being would have to spend quite a bit of effort to escape. But, to think that a treasure as such would be devoured by this fella just like that. If not because the difference in strength between them was too great, Mo Qingshan might not have been able to stop herself from rushing up and killing this guy. What now? Why do you seem so moody? Was it because you could not bear to lose that set of immortal weapon? Right now, Mo Qingshan's face was terrible and extremely infuriated indeed. However, she did not dare to voice out her dissent. When Lin Fan saw that, he knew that he had to ask in sniggers. He loved the feeling of being able to disturb others while they could do nothing about it at all. Mo Qingshan shook her head. Just what do you want with me? How about letting this matter end right here? Once I leave this treasure ground, I can give you all the treasures I have with me. Lin Fan was slightly confused as he let out a look of astonishment. What sort of a person do you take me, Lin Fan, as? You were the one who brought me into this treasure ground. How can I do something such as chasing my benefactor away? For the treasure ground exploration this time around, you can rest at ease. As long as I'm around, nothing will happen for sure. Mo Qingshan looked at Lin Fan with an absolutely miserable face. She felt that she had just met a lunatic. But on second thoughts, that should be about right. If this guy weren't a lunatic, why would he kill the Grand Master candidate of the Kunlun God sect in front of the masses? How else would he kill the Hall Master Black Demon for nothing? Everything, every single thing, pointed toward this man being a lunatic. At this moment, Lin Fan hugged Mo Qingshan even closer to him. What do you think is up with this place? We seem to have walked quite a bit now, but how are we not seeing even a single person yet? Mo Qingshan did not know what to say, but she did not dare to hide anything from him. This is only the outer perimeter of the treasure ground. The true treasure lies in the core region. Oh, so that's the case. Lin Fan nodded his head and smiled before casting his sight even further up. Within this treasure ground, the spirit chi was rich, but at the same time, there were hidden lethal dangers around them. Even though Lin Fan was strong, he did not dare to get careless here. Who knew what would happen? Therefore, he had to take every step with care and conscientiousness. As he was dragging this Mo Qingshan along with him, if there were any dangers that he could not escape from, he could just easily toss her out to fend against them. Even though this Mo Qingshan was really gorgeous, anyone who wanted to FCK him over would be his enemy. Be it men, women, the elderly, or the young, all of them deserved to die instead. As for this treasure ground, Lin Fan did not know what was up with this place. But, if Mo Qingshan had dared to bring a few people in with her, she must definitely know about some hidden spots or something. Somewhere in the void, Qin Shungjin had brought the 3 disciples of the Kunlun God sect with him inside the treasure ground. I have already brought you guys here. The rest of the encounters will depend on you guys. Since Qin Shungjin had agreed to the conditions of the Kunlun God sect, he naturally would not go back on his words. He had known about this treasure ground since a long time ago. Back before he had even reached the immortal state, he had already obtained the key to reach the core of this treasure ground. However, because he wasn't strong enough back then, he did not dare to divulge it out. Later on, after his powers were raised gradually, he returned to this place. But because of his strength lacking still, he was unable to reach the depths, and could only search the outer perimeters. But, even just the outer perimeter alone had a lot of treasures which Qin Shungjin had taken in all for himself, thereby crafting out his legendary name in the Endless Mainland. Now that his strength had been raised to a monstrous level, as long as he could enter the core region and inherit the legacy, his path toward revolting against the heavens could be initiated entirely. 9 sects, 6 factions, none of them mattered to him at all. The 3 Grand Master candidates of the Kunlun God sect exchanged glances with one another. Not daring to follow Qin Shungjin, they ended their accompaniment and went on their own way. After looking at the 3 of them leaving, Qin Shungjin let out a grin. How could he share a treasure ground as such with others? Letting the 3 of them in was naturally of no concern to him. All the treasures in the outer perimeter had already been taken away by him, leaving not even a single chicken feather. Even if they wanted to flip this entire place upside down, they would absolutely not be able to find anything. At this moment, Qin Shungjin disappeared from where he was and headed toward the core region. There was a mysterious aura beckoning him from the depths of the ground. Walking the entire way with Mo Qingshan, Lin Fan had not come across anything useful at all. With his sharp judgment, he could tell that this place seemed to have been pillaged before by others. In the outer perimeter, there were some holes where things clearly had been moved around by someone else before them. November LBJNN. At this moment, Lin Fan looked over at Mo Qingshan. If you know of anything, you had better let me know now. Otherwise, this harmonious relationship between us may take on a stark change real quickly. This was a strange treasure ground, unlike any other secret ground. In most secret grounds, one would most likely be able to obtain treasures on their way toward the core region. But, they had been searching this place for such a long time now, and still found nothing. Mo Qingshan's face changed slightly, but she concealed it well. I truly don't know anything about this place. I've never been in here before. Lin Fan chuckled out and lifted his finger while twirling it as a stream of Buddhist light shrouded his fingertips. Do you know what this is? Lin Fan chuckled. Mo Qingshan's brows furrowed. This aura caused her to feel pretty uncomfortable. This is a mystic skill of the Buddhist race, called the Great Buddha's Light of Purification. It is used to purify all beings in the world who are dishonest. Even though your cultivation state is at the ancestor immortal lower level, it would still be really easy for me to purify you. And once you're purified, you will lose all your free will entirely, just like a walking corpse. Say, if I use this on you right now, you're going to have to obey my orders from now on. Anything I'd ask of you, you'd do readily. Lin Fan said with a light tone as though he was talking about something really casual. However, these words were like surging waves in the ears of Mo Qingshan. Turn into a walking corpse. Lose her free will entirely. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Up ahead, you would need to open up yet another dimension before you can get into the true treasure ground. Mo Qingshan did not dare to hide anything anymore and spilled the beans. She had realized that this fellow was really way too scary. Lin Fan's lips curled into a grin as he fondled Mo Qingshan's head. That's the way. Cooperate with me, and I'll ensure your safety. After all, it's been a long time since I've done something so ruthless. Although, I'd say that these hands of mine aren't rusty at all. Mo Qingshan, Chapter 1059 Start Pillaging. Chapter 1059, Start Pillaging. Senior brother, the reason why the Grand Master allowed us to come here this time around is to see if we can find out which almighty being left this treasure ground behind. Seeking treasures is secondary. Fairy Bai Lu, Yu Shower, spoke up at this moment. Dressed in dark green, she looked ravishing beyond words. Yet, even though she was a woman, her cultivation state was earth-shattering. Furthermore, any disciple who could become a Grand Master candidate of the Kunlun God sect was definitely extraordinary indeed. Rumors had it that this Fairy Bai Lu was the reincarnation of some old ancient immortal, so she could cultivate again easily. But, whether or not those rumors were real, no one truly knew. Yes, even though this Qin Shungjin brought us in here, he did not bring us to any place important. He has been keeping guard against us. Ancestor Immortal Julie, Jin Julie, commented. Jin Julie had a muscular build and looked extremely menacing. He was once a commoner somewhere in the Endless Mainland. But, he was scouted by Tai Qianshan and brought back to the Kunlun God sect. His entire body cruised with power that was boundless, definitely not something that ordinary people could compare with. I was just that in front of a heavenly genius such as Qin Shungjin, any single bit of light they had seemed dim in comparison. But for most ordinary people, they were still existences that others could never reach up to. However, that Qin Shungjin would have never imagined that back when he had borrowed the Kunlun God fire to refine his mystic skills, the Grand Master had already implanted yet another mystic skill on him. No matter where he went in this world, the Grand Master would be able to know where he was. Golden Immortal Kun Dong, Zheng Chengken, said. At this point, Ancestor Immortal Julie, Jin Julie, was the one with the highest cultivation state here. Sweeping his sleeves, he said, "Watch out for your safety." If that Qin Shungjin's killing intent is triggered toward us, there's no way we're going to escape from his grasp. If we meet any precious treasure, remember that we must not fight with Qin Shungjin over it. All we want to know is the almighty being who left these treasures behind. Understood, senior brother. Both of them nodded their heads in agreement. If anything happened to them, it would most definitely be because of Qin Shungjin. Ancestor immortal Zhu Li, Jin Zhu Li, got his powers to rumble out as he pointed a finger into the sky. All of a sudden, a long river appeared out of the void, seemingly imperceptible. From within that river, an authoritative voice boomed out. Great tracking technique was one of the unparalleled mystic skills of the Kunlun God sect. Even though it had no attacking function, it was the most tyrannical skill used for tracking down others. Once they were locked on, there was basically no way they could escape from it. Go that way, Ancestor Immortal Zhu Li spoke up. He then brought his two juniors with him and dove into the void toward Qin Shungjin's direction. HMPH. Tai Qianshan planted a tracking mystic skill on me and thought that I wouldn't be the wiser. Since that's the case, I'll play along with it and lure them over here. There are quite a number of powerful living beings in the core region here anyway. It's not a bad idea to have them help me hold back some of these living beings. Qin Shungjin had made use of the Kunlun God fire to refine his mystic skill, so how could he not know that Tai Qianshan had used some tricks on him? However, none of that mattered. Since that was the case, they might as well come on then. Lin Fan brought Mo Qingshan ahead. When they came to a stop, he realized that the skies up ahead were a little overcast. In his opinion, this treasure ground was truly extraordinary. It was really like an entire world in itself. Someone who could cleave out such a world must definitely have quite an incredible strength, and must have been eternally indestructible. This was an amount of strength that could chill anyone at the mere thought of it. Is it here? Lin Fan asked. Mo Qingshan nodded her head. That's right. After entering, this was the place that the small key had guided me over to. At this moment, Mo Qingshan took out that small crystal shard. The crystal shard burst forth with a brilliant gleam of light as it seeped right into the void just like a sharp knife and sliced it open. To have a dimension hidden within a dimension, this was truly incredible. Lin Fan grabbed Mo Qingshan along with him and entered that dimension. With that, the scene before his very eyes started changing. When Lin Fan caught sight of the scene before him, he was taken aback. This was a world of a difference compared to out there. He could see an entire sky of planets as though they were part of the cosmos. Pishu. A meteorite bolted past them, causing a tremendously huge stir. This place. Lin Fan felt his heart tense up before taking a closer look. This single dimension seemed as though it was being supported by some gigantic formation. That was because not too far in the distance was a single lone pillar that stood tall. At the same time, there were countless mysterious symbols etched on the pillar, along with all sort of diagrams of weird beasts. As for the other pillars, Lin Fan had not caught sight of any just yet. But the situation around this place was definitely not right. He had to be careful with his moves. While Mo Qingshan knew about these things, this was the first time she had entered this region as well. Just at this moment, a meteorite that was the size of a small mountain flew toward Lin Fan. That speed, that strength, if it were any other person knocked by it, they would definitely evaporate into dust and cease to exist. However, Lin Fan pushed out with his palm and slammed it onto the meteorite, gripping it tightly in his hand. The meteorite was so huge that it covered Lin Fan's body entirely, such that he couldn't even be seen anymore. Ding! Congratulations on discovering Heavenly Mysterious Blood Crystal. Heavenly Mysterious Blood Crystal. Legendary item for crafting weapons. One of the materials for crafting upper-grade immortal weapons. Lin Fan wasn't bothered about immortal weapons or whatnot. But he knew of the value of some of the materials. It was especially the case for this Heavenly Mysterious Blood Crystal. This was some good stuff here. And now that he had such a huge piece of it in his hands, this was just bloody heaven revolting. At this moment, the surface layer of the meteorite peeled off and exposed its true identity. When Mo Qingshan caught sight of this item before her, she was momentarily stumped. That's the Heavenly Mysterious Blood Crystal. And, for such a huge piece to appear. This. Mo Qingshan was totally stunned. Even back in her sect, she had never once seen such a huge Heavenly Mysterious Blood Crystal. Without saying anything more, Lin Fan kept it in his storage. Just who in the world was the one who had left this treasure ground behind? How could it possess such abundant wealth? Mo Qingshan was absolutely astounded, with a face of disbelief as though she had been rooted from shock. Ha ha, this is a good place indeed. Lin Fan burst out in laughter. He then saw that there were quite a number of meteorites not too far away, varying in size. Some of them were smaller than the heavenly mysterious blood crystal, while others were way larger. Lin Fan's body disappeared in a flash as he grabbed those meteorites. A sturdy power burst forth from him as he gripped these meteorites tightly in his palms. Anyone under the golden immortal state could die when facing these meteorites. Given their magnitude, speed, and strength, one would require an incredible amount of might in order to stop them in their tracks. Ding. Discovered Earth Abyssal Fire Rock. Ding. Discovered Power of Golden Sand. Ding. Discovered Time-Space Mysterious Hell Metal. ... Just like that, Lin Fan pillaged all of them without a single bit of consideration. Anything he met with, he would swipe it clean. Mo Qingshan was just watching with wide open jaws right now. She felt as though she was hallucinating, with everything seeming so surreal. She had witnessed all of those legendary items earlier on. Even if a single one of them were cast outside, countless martial artists might break their necks in the scuffles over them. They were all materials for upper-grade immortal weapons. There were even some which were used for crafting supreme-grade immortal weapons. Go. Continue pillaging. Let's go. Lin Fan had not expected to have such a good fortune. At the same time, he caught sight of something even more interesting up ahead. Chapter 1060 Devour It All. Chapter 1060. Devour It All. Mo Qingshan was immensely regretful right now. She had not expected that there would be so many treasures within this treasure ground. If all of these were obtained by a single person, how heaven-revolting would that be? But, it was all too late for regrets now as they had already entered this place. Watching how Lin Fan was just reaping in everything, Mo Qingshan was equally covetous of it all. However, being oppressed by this person before her right now left her with not much choice. A few leaps were all it took for Lin Fan to reach the maximum speed. When he caught sight of everything before him, even his breathing nearly froze up. 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons were floating there gently, emanating out a brilliant immortal might. Spear, axe, saber, sword, clock, whip, and stick. All of these supreme-grade immortal weapons were arranged beside one another as though they were part of a set. When Mo Qingshan caught sight of this, she felt as though she was asphyxiated. Supreme-grade immortal weapons. These were all supreme-grade immortal weapons. Within the endless mainland, even a single supreme-grade immortal weapon was enough to be a treasure that could back up an entire sect, let alone 7 of these supreme-grade immortal weapons right here. And by the looks of it, the 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons seemed to be a part of a set. That was even more incredible. Heaven-revolting. This was just heaven-revolting. All of you bloody get over here. Lin Fan waved out with his hands and grabbed out toward the 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons. But, all of a sudden, the 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons started going berserk. Slay, cleave, ... Even though those supreme-grade immortal weapons were items without a master, the weapon spirits within would naturally not allow themselves to be controlled by anyone. Therefore, they were fighting back vehemently. The amount of power that burst forth from them was naturally mighty. It could practically cause anything in its path to wither. Bam! A bright burst of light shone out as Lin Fan's palm strike was shattered. Powerful, really powerful indeed. To think that the combination of 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons could actually bring out power of this level. Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy, feeling as though he was truly way too lucky to be able to meet these 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons. To make matters even more joyful, they were grouped up together into an entirely different state of horror. Mortal, we are not for you to control. The intellect of the weapon spirits of the 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons were nowhere lower than Lin Fan's. Of course, they knew that the other party was trying to suppress them. But, given their free selves right now, how could they allow themselves to be subdued by someone? Whether or not you are controlled is not something you get to decide alone. Lin Fan hollered as he threw out a punch, forming a tornado that ripped the void while a doomsday calamity god spirit howled out. Given Lin Fan's current strength, even if it were a powerful being at the ancestor immortal full cultivation state, he would be able to give him a fight. Therefore, even though these were supreme-grade immortal weapons, Lin Fan wasn't all that concerned. Courting death. The 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons went into a frenzy as the weapon spirits flashed out with an immortal light shrouding them. Every single move they made was more earth-shattering as immortal chi tore the spacetime around them. Heaven and earth-destroying spear. The god-breaking spear turned around furiously and pierced out at Lin Fan. The laws of the immortal Tao were bursting wildly and wrapping around Lin Fan. Closing his palms, Lin Fan pushed out to destroy everything in his path and mow them down. All of you, get over here. As he spread his hand wide open, his 5 fingers took on the shape of a claw that grabbed the god-breaking spear into his hands. Damn it, let me go. The weapon spirit of the god-breaking spear howled out as the spear intent swiveled out and sliced at Lin Fan's palms. But, how could Lin Fan let this guy fulfill his wish? He naturally suppressed it without giving it the chance to run. Source sealing technique. Lin Fan's hands moved out as a seal slapped down and steadied the god-breaking spear. Dong. N-O, vel, b, in dot c, ohm. A loud sound reverberated throughout the entire world. The heaven and earth clock rang out, which was a supreme-grade immortal weapon that could attack one's spirits. The sound of the clock surged into Lin Fan's body, wrecking apart the laws within. However, how could Lin Fan possibly give it this chance? Channeling all the powers in his body, he attempted a forceful suppression as he threw everything out with a fist that landed on the heaven and earth clock. Bam, bam, we have to fuse together. We are not his match individually. The weapon spirits howled out. Right after that, it felt as though the 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons had developed some connection with one another. With the god-breaking spear already being suppressed by Lin Fan, the remaining 6 supreme-grade immortal weapons suddenly fused together and turned into an immortal weapon that Lin Fan had never seen before. Sweeping through the 8 desolates, almighty and utmost, single strike of the heavenly elements. The 6 supreme-grade immortal weapons sent out their strongest attack, causing Lin Fan's face to freeze up slightly. He took out the eternal axe straightaway and retaliated with a cleave. The axe flash burst out, slicing through the firmaments. All the planets floating around nearby exploded out violently. Lin Fan took a massive stride forth and appeared above them, brazen. I gave you guys the chance to bow down and serve, yet you guys dare to strike at me. I'll devour you guys. Lin Fan didn't care for these immortal weapons at all. For him, all of these were external items. What he depended on was that incomparably formidable body of his, as well as that strength which could suppress everything out there. The source of power rumbled out within Lin Fan's body as countless unparalleled mystic skills were deployed, smashing toward these 6 supreme-grade immortal weapons. Ba-boom! A gigantic explosion boomed out as Lin Fan grabbed the 6 supreme-grade immortal weapons in his hands. Throwing them into his mouth all at once, he chomped down furiously and chewed them all up. Bam! Damn it, you beast! To think that you would dare to try eating us up. The weapon spirits screamed out, evidently not having expected that they would come across someone so sick. They were supreme-grade immortal weapons, and a set to boot. But, after being sealed here for such a long time, they could not exert even 10% of their strength. If they could get out and reactivate their laws of the immortal Tao, they would be able to unleash their full strength. How could this mortal be their match then? Big ancient demon, don't say that your old bro didn't take care of you. I'll give all of them to you. Lin Fan bellowed out as he ripped the 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons apart with his teeth and refined them into power of source. The big ancient demon had not had a chance to perform for a long time now, only cultivating silently within the demon city. Even though he was an immortal weapon, he naturally could not compare with these supreme-grade immortal weapons. But, under the nourishment of these 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons, his grade climbed up rapidly. Middle-grade immortal weapon, upper-grade immortal weapon, supreme-grade immortal weapon. The demon city underwent yet another round of changes. Ever since it turned into a supreme-grade immortal weapon, it had even cleaved out a demon realm and formed a world of its own. Compared to the past, the big ancient demon was at least 100 times stronger now. This was a change in his basic foundation. If there were no changes to him even after consuming so many supreme-grade immortal weapons, it would really be one hell of a Mother Sea King dog's tea. How could this be? To think that he would just devour those 7 supreme-grade immortal weapons. Doesn't he know that if he were to utilize them properly, he would be able to unleash an even greater amount of power? Mo Qingshan was just absolutely befuddled. She did not know what to say anymore. Everything that she had witnessed today was probably something she wouldn't be able to forget for her entire life. Horrifying. Way too horrifying. Choosing to not take the respect I give. Courting death. Lin Fan floated there calmly. He naturally knew that these supreme-grade immortal weapons were far from ordinary. But, what FCK use was that? With all those legendary items that he had obtained earlier on, wanting to craft out supreme-grade immortal weapons was definitely not something difficult anymore.